for some reason. Public participation, we will be at about 7:15, actually probably about 7:20 this evening. We will have time set aside for public comment. Our rules are no disparaging comments, content of not more than 2 minutes. I believe we have at least one person that has indicated they'd like to speak this evening. Want to reiterate the resources that are available. Again, for general town resources, you can go to the website, readingma.gov. For activities specific to COVID and looking for help at Human Elder Services, we have a special email set up, covid-19help@ci.reading.ma.us. You can also call Town Hall, and there's a voice menu that you can walk through. Most importantly, there are a series of resources that have been made available through the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Support. Elliott Emergency Services available 24/7. We have their phone number here. It's also available on the website. We also work with Interface Mental Health Referral Helpline that's available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. In addition to these resources, the Mass Substance Abuse Information Education Hotline is available. And then the Coalition makes its services available to all residents as well. Sami Salkin is the outreach coordinator. You can reach her at her email here or at her phone. And again, anytime there's an emergency, please, you should be calling 911 directly.
Just wanted to underscore one point that the Reading Coalition had alerted us to, because I know you always conclude with for emergencies, please call 911. They had also indicated that in a mental health emergency, residents can call Elliott Emergency Services directly, although help can take up to 2 hours to arrive. So if you need help at your door immediately, call 911. But for mental health emergencies, Elliott Emergency Services is another resource you can call directly.
Thanks, Ann. And to reinforce that also, that is a 24/7 resource. It's not just a business hour available resource.
Correct.
Thank you for that, Ann. You probably are seeing signs around town with our effort to encourage residents to mask up with our cute little pictograms here. This evening's agenda, quick overview here. COVID response will follow. Dr. Rick Lopez is going to join us as well for that. Board will vote on a resolution condemning the violence at the Capitol. We'll follow that with liaison reports, public comment. Then we have a couple of presentations. Aaron Schaefer will be very involved, talking about business initiatives in town. Talk about the COVID impact, about outdoor dining. We'll talk about the downtown initiatives. We'll then move on to a discussion about parking and the potential of creating a parking advisory and recommendations committee. We'll then have an update on the MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan. From there, we're going to talk about the Auburn Street water tank. First, a little bit of an update and then board discussion to follow in terms of how we'd like things to proceed. We'll have then a discussion about beer and wine only package store licenses. This is the board's decision on how and if we would want to pursue this. We then have a letter that was sent regarding the state biomass rules and a request that the board vote on approving a letter to send into the legislature. We have a number of appointments through the VASC. We have 2 meeting minutes, I believe, future agenda items, and I think that that's a mouthful from there. So let's go into COVID response. Rick, I see you're there.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, Bob, did you want to speak now or do you want to speak after COVID?
I can do it after COVID.
Okay, if that's all right, let's do that. So
Okay.
Rick, the floor is yours.
Yep.
Let me turn off my sharing first.
So I just have a couple things. One is I should mention that we have hired a second public health nurse, Shuang Shen, who started a couple weeks ago, and between her and Christine, they sort of form a full-time equivalent. So, and really coming just at the right time, given what's happening in terms of vaccination and contact tracing. With respect to cases, the information I got from Christine today is that we're down to about 278 cases, which is down significantly from last week. I think we were at 500, but that parallels what we're seeing at the state level, where we had a couple weeks of 5,000 active cases, and I think today the numbers that came out were like 2,500. So I think we're seeing a kind of downswing on the post-holiday surge. In the school system, there's about 11, 12 cases or so, sort of evenly split between high school, middle school, and elementary, and a couple staff people, 3 athletes. We've had clusters at Artis, as I mentioned before, and we had a cluster of 6 Reading soccer players who attended a gym in Danvers. So Danvers Board of Health is tracking them. And there was 1 employee at Smart Physical Therapy. So that is it. So I would say in general, it does seem to be trending down. The other sort of pieces around the vaccinations that's been going on, there's been a lot of work done in the last week or 10 days to prepare for the vaccination clinics. The staff has signed up for the Massachusetts COVID vaccination program, which they needed to do. They've also been trained on PrepMod, which is the software that the Commonwealth has purchased to help facilitate the mass vaccination program. And mass meaning large numbers of people, not Massachusetts. And this software actually does everything from allowing access sites to order vaccine, to report back on the vaccinations they're doing. And it also has a sort of patient or community-facing aspect, which allows for scheduling appointments for vaccination as they're needed. And it also connects with the Massachusetts Immunization Information System, which tracks the vaccination status as we move along. So getting all these pieces in place was a significant effort on the part of the department. We did hold 3 vaccination clinics for first responders, Wednesday, Thursday, and then today. And according to Peter, I think we're pretty much through all of our first responders, at least in terms of their first vaccination. We are using the Moderna vaccine, and they will need a second vaccination. I think it's in 28 days. So we've kind of got through that. When you look at the way the state has phased the vaccination program, in phase 1, we're all aware that the hospital, providers have gotten vaccinated, and the first responders, and we know that, long-term care facilities like Artis are getting vaccinated through the federal program with Walgreens and CVS. We've pretty much done the vaccinations that I think we can do in phase 1. Also in phase 1 is the public health nurses providing vaccination. So that would be Christine and Shuang, and I believe Elise at the senior center also does that, and she's been vaccinated. The phase 1 also includes the school nurses. And so I talked to Peter about that today, and he's going to get in touch, and we're going to see if we can work through that. But I think that sort of concludes what I see as we're responsible for in terms of phase 1. There's a whole list of other sort of classes of people who can, qualify under phase 1, like dialysis workers and blood donation workers. And I mean, the list actually goes on for about 3 pages, but they're not really kind of what I think we would be doing. We are planning, work is underway to plan for phase 2, which would be a much broader set of people, people over 75, people with comorbidities over 65, and actually quite a few of other workers, you know, meat packers and sanitation workers and convenience store workers. I mean, the list goes on. And so that is going to start in February. And, you know, that will be a big push. I think we will need to, you know, ramp up for that and have pretty extensive vaccination clinics to be able to work through that during the course of February and March. And so that is all I have. Are there any questions or comments?
And I think I saw your hand go up instantly.
Yes, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Rick. I was wondering if you could tell us where residents can get the best information about where and when they can get vaccinated.
The best information that I have seen is on mass.gov/COVID vaccine. And if you go to that website, it has detail about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It has a list of all the mass vaccination sites that are coming online. We heard about Fenway Park today, and you know, Gillette started a couple of days ago, and I think there's going to be more
Right.
over the next few days and weeks. So that's the best place to find out where you would qualify, and then where you can get the vaccine.
Bob, do you want to?
Am I correct in thinking that it's for later phases, it's somewhat general right now, and as you know, as each group of individuals become eligible, more specific information about, you know, precisely where and precisely when will become more available the sooner we approach a particular group in a particular phase.
Yes, I would expect that to happen. Right now, you know, what I don't know is the list in phase 2 is so long, you know, grocery clerks and so forth. And so right now in phase 1, the people who are getting vaccinated have photo IDs of their clinical positions, which make it easy to know that, yes, they are eligible for phase 1. When we get to phase 2, I'm not really sure how they're going to sort that out, or, you know, in terms of someone showing up, and I work at a convenience store, and so I qualify. But I think that's a detail that would have to be worked out. But I would think we would be setting up, just like we do flu clinics, but many more of those types of clinics as we approach February.
I think Bob actually can provide quite a bit of color on this.
Yeah.
I'm sharing the town's homepage just to show you this location right here in the next few days will be a good reference for this topic. And I'll show you a test page we're just working on. So here's vaccine information, what we know. So it'll be a central location for residents to look. And you know, this is kind of a nice eye-catching graph or optic about the different phases. It explains, as Rick has described, the different people who are eligible, an estimated time frame, and sort of a rollout. So this will be a web page on the town's web page that can be a location people can start. And then, as Rick mentioned, we'll link to the Massachusetts web pages as needed.
Thank you, Bob. That's great.
Certainly.
Carlo.
Thanks. Dr. Lopez, are you comfortable with the supply on phase 1 and phase 2 right now?
Well, in terms of phase 1, we've been able to achieve our goals in terms of the first responders. In terms of, I haven't heard anything about, I don't think we're going to know about the vaccine supply in phase 2 until we get there and know that there's adequate, you know, supply coming through. It's still a couple weeks away, and this every day it changes. It really depends on obviously what the state gets from the federal government. But we had no problems with phase one.
Thank you.
Karen, did I see your hand?
Yes, thanks, Mark. I was just wondering, I agree that proposed website is eye-catching and it looks like it's going to be super helpful. And I wonder if we can also back that up with a PR campaign as we get closer to that time. We could potentially use the reverse dialing system. The town, well, it'll be on the town website. It says coronavirus now. I would expect that would change to vaccination and vaccine. And I was just wondering how else we can make sure that people are starting to call and ask. So if we can be proactive in making sure people know where to go, I think that'll wrap nicely into what you've already been planning.
I agree. I mean, we had that kind of campaign for the flu vaccine, and I don't see why we couldn't do that or shouldn't do that for COVID as well.
So board members, there was a lot of discussion at the command meeting today about the planning, and Bob showed one of the elements that he's working on through Jane Wellman, but also getting the planning department thinking through, as Rick talked about, the clinics, the number of people that can provide the vaccinations that are in town, the timing, the location, and then as start of a discussion of how to communicate as well. In other words, to reach out to the appropriate people, not talking to everybody and then suddenly having to figure out, oh my gosh, no, actually you're not eligible.
I should also mention that the paramedics were also doing vaccinations as well for the first responders, in addition to the public health nurses.
Other questions or comments for Rick? Great. Thank you very much. Bob, do you want to do an update on anything from Commander COVID?
No, I think that's it, other than in your third version or your packet, you should find the last two sets of meeting minutes or meeting notes, and today's meeting will be done quickly. So you're caught up other than today's meetings in terms of meeting notes in your packet.
Great. All right. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Bob had asked for a moment of privilege here. So Bob, I'm going to turn it to you.
Thank you. You can view this as a companion piece to some remarks made by Dr. Doherty last Thursday at the school committee. For 15 years, many of us have worked hard to build and maintain the strong relationship between the town and school organizations in Reading. When we needed budget help to help keep our CASA funded after a grant expired, Dr. Doherty did not hesitate to step up and give full school support. When the middle schools needed help to maintain their foreign language program, they received unanimous town department head support with mid-year draft budget cuts. The list of so-called mutual aid over those 15 years is long. And to be clear, it's one joint list, it's not two competing lists. The town and the schools serve different segments of the community, but we're all in the same family of public services to our beloved Reading community. Late last week, an email to the select board revealed some troubling comments directed at our teachers. Dr. Doherty spent a great deal of time in conversation with Police Chief Clark and myself about what to say to the community at the Thursday night school committee meeting, and respectfully, even more importantly, what to do. I would like to thank John for his open dialogue, his comments, and an apology that is graciously accepted. I would also like to thank other school employees, including teachers, for reaching out to further that dialogue with different town staff, including police. After that email and some preliminary investigation, it was clear we had a problem within our town school family. And at that point, it was unclear what the origin was, but it was clearly developing. This was Thursday. I asked Chief Clark, well, maybe it sounded more like an order, to quickly find the problem and solve it. I was not surprised to learn that Chief Clark was already working on it, and within a couple of hours, the situation had improved, as reported to me by a member of the select board. While words are important, actions are paramount. Dave, your tenure as chief has been more challenging than anyone could have imagined. You and the Reading Police Department continue to rise to meet those challenges with compassion and professionalism. You all have my deepest thanks. But to be clear, I accept full responsibility for any hurtful comments made, either directly or indirectly, by any employee of the town. I offer a heartfelt apology to the community and especially to our teachers. Your profession is an honorable one. Our students remain our future. And your responsibility now is as large as it ever has been. I don't know how you do it. It's clear what I expect of town employees. And if the steps we have taken so far do not fully solve this family problem, you have my word, it will be solved. We are all dealing with so many difficult challenges to simply move from one day to the next. Stress levels and mental health concerns abound. To think that our own family is creating problems instead of solving them is deeply concerning to me. It feels like a crushing, although not fatal, blow to the 15 years of unity, and it is something I take very personally. Last week, John, Dave, and I spoke a lot about the need for everyone to take a step back and a deep breath. I very much look forward to the day where we can all have the luxury to agree on that course of action. Thank you, Mark, for allowing me to say a few words. I'll have some somewhat related comments to make during my town manager report.
Thank you, Bob. On the agenda next is board resolution condemning capital violence. So board members, you received a resolution to look at. Vanessa?
Thanks, Mark. So I was the one who sent this to Mark to ask to put this on the agenda. Following the domestic terrorism at the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th, I felt it was important that the select board adopt a resolution condemning those actions, and that's what you'll find in the packet. For those watching at home, is it possible to put the resolution on the screen?
Yeah,
I'm happy to read it.
I can do that.
Okay.
Can you read that?
Yes, thank you. So the resolution reads, the Town of Reading Select Board vehemently condemns the assault and violent takeover of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. We join people around the Commonwealth and the country in calling for an end to the hateful, divisive, and false rhetoric that led to domestic terrorism. This is not what we want America to represent. We repudiate the wholly false narrative that led to this assault and any effort to perpetuate it. The Select Board strongly encourages all of our town leaders within our municipal government, local boards, our first responders, and the Reading schools to join us in speaking out to reject falsehoods, conspiracy theories, and incitement of violence. We stand united in unshakable support of the processes laid out in our Constitution for the peaceful and orderly transfer of power. We express our gratitude to all law enforcement officials who put their lives on the line defending our nation. We send gratitude and heartfelt condolences to the family of Capitol Police officers Brian Sicknick and Howard Liebengood, who died as a result of their service to protect the Capitol from domestic terrorists. The Reading Select Board stands resolute in continuing our work for the greater good of residents, our town, and our nation.
Thanks, Vanessa. I think it states, in my opinion, what very much needs to be stated, that this is a democracy. It's based on the Constitution. To me, this is clearly stating how we need to speak of condemning the violence that took place and supporting our Constitution and the bodies that run it. It's really sad that there were lives lost, that there were police officers' lives that were lost. And I fully support this myself. Other board members? Carlo.
I guess I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Vanessa, for providing this. Are we expected to vote on this? Is she just reading a statement, or what are we planning to do?
So this actually, I'm sorry, go ahead, Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. So generally speaking, the board can issue resolutions for any number of topics. The resolution is written, and then we do vote on it to adopt it as representative of the board's beliefs, values, or just a general statement, depending on what the content is. So in this case, yes, a vote would be, we would pass a motion to accept the resolution as written. And that would be the will of the board.
Okay, thank you. I guess other than the day in question, it wasn't a good day for our country. Maybe I missed it, did anyone from town staff or any of us, or I know none of us were there, but did anyone breach the Capitol? I mean, I understand what this says and means, but I'm afraid we're going down a slippery slope unless someone from the town or one of us spoke out publicly that I don't feel comfortable bringing national politics to the board. I agree with the sentiment here, but this is not our place. We can do this individually. We can do it on our social media pages. We can write letters to the newspaper, but we have to follow the charter, and that's what we were elected for. So again, I agree with the sentiment, but I do not plan on voting on this. Thank you.
The board members? Karen?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Vanessa. I don't have a problem with this resolution. We won't be alone. We're not the first. We won't be the last. And I agree with the sentiments in this letter.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah.
I certainly have been, grieving, I think as many of you have, since the events on the 6th took place for this assault on our democracy. And I think, as upholders of the Constitution ourselves, it's okay for us to speak out about this assault on our democracy and to stand together in supporting the peaceful transfer of power. I think this probably, it hits home to all Americans, I think, for different reasons. I think as elected officials, I think we probably, and public servants, it probably hits close to home because there was an assault perpetuated against elected officials and public servants. So I appreciate Vanessa bringing this forward, and I do support it and the sentiments herein.
Thanks, Ann. Any further comments? Carl?
Thank you, Mark. I don't want to, this is, unfortunately, I don't want to go down the road that we don't need to go down, but there was a lot of violence this year. And so where do we draw the line as a board on what violence we discuss and condemn? Property was damaged, neighborhoods were taken over, police were attacked and killed. I mean, what are we doing here? Of course we condemn violence. We're stating the obvious. I really don't want to go down this path. I mean, I know I'm outnumbered here, but again, I agree with the sentiment. I watched things unfold. I was at work that day. I didn't really know what's going on until the afternoon. And it was disgusting. But I don't think we need to have a vote. We can all voice our individual opinions. We all have freedom of speech, but we are here to abide by the charter. And the charter does not state the federal government. It states the town of Reading and the state of Massachusetts. And that's what we were elected to do. So if we're going to start picking and choosing what violence to condemn, that's a very slippery slope as a board. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah.
All right, I am unaware of anything within our charter that would prevent us from voting on this. It's, it's a statement. It's not an action. It's a statement. It's allowing us to use our own speech.
I don't disagree with that, Ann, but do we do this every 2 weeks when we meet? Do we talk about violence? Do we talk about what's going on in Wakefield and Linfield and Stoneham and in Arkansas? No, we don't. We take care of the residents and businesses of this town. But like I said for the third time, I agree with this statement, but we should not be voting on it and bringing this to the board. It just opens up a bad precedent. That's all I'm saying. I'm outnumbered here, but you guys do what you want.
Vanessa?
Thank you, Mark. I would respectfully request that we have a motion to vote on this. Thank you.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we adopt this statement with the correction that we change the word capital to end with OL.
Second.
Any further discussion to be had? I actually want to make one comment just in response. In the history of our country, I don't know that we've ever dealt with an insurrection from inside like we're talking about here. It was an assault to democracy. It was an assault to authority, sovereign authority. It was an assault to elections and the election process, of which we are an important part of. And residents of our town, residents of our state, residents of our country, residents of the world need to understand that we run free and fair elections, that we have processes when there are questions, and they run through court systems, which they were allowed to do in this case. We also have laws in place that say when you go and attempt insurrection, it has gone beyond any other lines possible. It is different from any other kind of violence that's taking place. It's challenging the Constitution of the country, Constitution of the state. And I view this as a different case from other things. I most certainly don't approve of violence. And I don't think we're going to need to meet every week and have a discussion about violence. I think this was a historic moment that involved challenges and attempts to find and kill, in some cases, elected leaders. It was a challenge to democracy in its most basic form. And I think if we can't stand up on this one, I'm not sure where we can stand up. I very strongly urge that we support this.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, I will take a roll call vote here as I'm seeing people on my screen. Vanessa?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
Carlo?
Abstain.
Karen?
Yes.
And Mark, yes. Thanks, folks. Next, we have liaison reports. Who would like to go first? Carlo.
Thanks, Mark. A lot of you were at the meeting last week for CPDC. That's my only report. A lot of you were there, but I believe Ann couldn't make it. And basically it was a meeting about a bylaw change and outdoor dining and commerce and storage, about the CPDC doing a minor site plan review process and for private property. The select board will still be in charge, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, on public property. And that was the gist of the meeting. So they're still working on that, and that will be presented to town meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Carlo. Ann, anything on your list?
First, thanks to the Human Relations Advisory Committee for putting on the Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration yesterday in virtual form. It was certainly a challenge having to not gather in person, but certainly appreciate everyone who rose to the challenge and put together a nice virtual program that spoke to the need to work in the town of Reading to create the beloved community that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had envisioned. And I've been thinking about that a lot, particularly in light of some of the events that that Bob has talked about. And I think that's an effort that, that will take all of us. Another member of HRAC has recently resigned due to competing obligations. So there is a new vacancy on HRAC. And I think Bob and I had discussed some public safety liaison type updates, but I think Bob will be conveying those as he has more information than I.
Thanks, Ann. Vanessa?
Thanks, Mark. So I heard from some sports parents regarding the airing of high school games on RCTV. By way of background, I didn't know this, but RCTV apparently has never covered games with staff. Any games that some of us have seen on air have actually been recorded and relayed by volunteers, either parents or students. So there was a desire, especially given the recent changes to the inability to attend games, to air them live so folks could watch them from home. The good news is that in order to help, RCTV has actually obtained new equipment. And the other good news is that they are expecting to have robotic cameras set up and running within the next couple of weeks. I know they did a test run for the basketball game tonight, which went very well. So I've already coordinated with a member from the hockey side of the house and someone from basketball. So they're in the know. In order to allow for the airing of games, we need some help with some volunteers. I think there's already people lined up just from the phone calls I had earlier today. And those volunteers would undergo a short training with RCTV to understand the equipment. And then they'd be responsible for setting it up and taking it back at the end of the night. When we get the robotic cameras set up and running, then that dynamic will change a little bit for the better and allow for some kind of remote access. They're still working out the bugs there. But so huge thanks to RCTV for making this happen. Really great news for families that will soon be able to watch their kids play sports, which means a lot to the community. If people from other organizations or sports are interested in this as well, you can reach out to me directly at alvaradoselectboard@gmail.com. You can also reach out to Angela at rctv.org. Again, that's Angela at rctv.org. She's the one that'll be coordinating the trainings. So I think something really enjoyable and pleasant for everyone to be able to watch these kids play. So thanks very much to RCTV and for all the volunteers that are going to make it happen.
Thanks, Vanessa. Karen?
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I had conversations with some folks from the Conservation Commission, and I know we have a tree policy agenda item coming up, and I just wanted to ask that we make sure that we invite the tree warden and the conservation administrator and the Conservation Commission to weigh in, because this is going to be a policy that crosses areas. Currently, it's listed on our agenda for the DPW. So, Bob, I don't know, do you know if that was already planned?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. Conservation will be in already for 2 agenda items earlier, and I'm quite sure they intend to stay for this one.
Okay, and the tree warden as well?
Yes.
Okay, super, awesome. Okay, so under RMLD, Green Communities, I had a conversation with Senator Lewis. He is interested in having everyone in the Commonwealth successfully join Green Communities and is willing to put together some legislation to help Reading consider joining independently of the other RMLD communities. And he could potentially put a bill forward as soon as the 3rd week in February. I had a conversation with Neil Duffy at DOER, who also is our rep for Green Communities, and he has just asked if we would, someone from Reading would coordinate a Zoom call, reach out to our state delegation, and he will marshal the appropriate DOER folks. And so if they can get together to do that, then they'll be off and running and they will just report back to us. But that does seem very doable. So I'm following up, Bob. I had emailed you, but it was last week and I haven't heard back. Do you think that'll be possible for staff to help? Really,
it's a question of, there's a lot of people scheduled to juggle with our legislators, so we'll work on it, but I don't know how soon it will be.
Okay.
I assume we're going to want all 3, our 2 reps and our senator.
Well, if they don't want to come, that's another thing altogether.
I'm sure they will want to come. It's really just a question of advanced planning. So yeah, we'll work on it.
Okay, this is a time sensitive issue. We have about 30 days to get this in. So that's why I'm bringing it up again. The invitations need to go out quickly, but I appreciate you being able to follow up on this. And I got an update from Colleen today on the topic of EV, electric vehicle chargers, which I'm happy to share with the board. And she reported that her staff has been able to work with some folks on the town side, and there's an opportunity potentially for them to put in another grant application. So she will, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, they will definitely help us out with one EV charger. If they get the grant, they can potentially help us out with the second one. And I understand that there will be, it sort of makes sense to wrap it up in some PTTF discussions, which there's a meeting coming up early February. My only concern is parking is an ongoing challenge and will always be ongoing. I just want to make sure that this deciding an appropriate place to locate an EV charger doesn't get tied up in that. You'll see in her note that if you're an electric company, you would love to have it in a location that will be used and is near electricity. And, you know, if you're managing parking, obviously you're looking at a whole bunch of different locations. But that's good. That's great forward progress on that. And I got a call from the chair of the permanent building committee with respect to an agenda item we have on the schedule later tonight. So I'll just, we can talk about that then. That's it. Thank you.
Karen, can I ask you a couple of questions? One on the DOER, the Green Communities meeting. You mentioned RMLD is engaged with that as well, yes?
I would say we should invite them, but there's no to-dos for them.
Okay, they might just have interest in kind of observing. And Senator Lewis is kind of willing to champion the
Yes,
push?
most definitely.
Great. Yeah, I would be happy to stay engaged with that, or not. If we already have two people, I will stay back. But I think this is a great opportunity. I think it'd be, you know, let's see if we can do it. I'm sure that Representative Jones and Haggerty would have a staff person join if they're not able to attend themselves. But we should, if we can get inside that 30-day window, it would be great and get it done. So I'm very much in favor of that. My side, two things. First, follow up on the board's been having discussions, and we sent a letter regarding the elections bill, the Safe Elections bill. The update from that, I got a note from each of our legislators that a bill has been filed to extend the for the current March 31st expiration out into, I believe, the end of June. So it's just filed. It could still use support from residents, board members, whomever, to keep kind of pushing to get it done. They do understand our time sensitivity. I was asked to get some information from Laura in terms of deadlines. I supplied that to all the legislators, but it could use kind of continued pressure and push to hopefully get that done in a timely fashion. Second update, Commissioners of Trust is going through an RFP now for the ability to transport elderly residents through their funds, essentially, to appointments and other activities. The requirement from the trust is that they have to have needs, financial needs that meet certain requirements. But they're going through a process because we don't have great access to the van. You certainly can't put lots of people in vans for transport to medical appointments. This has been a really great service to some residents, and they're continuing that process. And the commissioners have been really good in kind of getting this done. And they're practicing COVID safe practices as part of the RFP as well. That's it. Bob, how about town manager update? Oh, I'm sorry, Carlo.
Thanks, Mark. I just had a question for you. I don't know if you have an update. I could have sworn you mentioned several meetings ago about the hospital trust fund. Maybe we could use some of that money for the vaccines. Was that a conversation that we had here, or an update?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. So what I've learned is that the using things like the hospital trust, it requires essentially a financial means test. The agreements that were reached after the wills require that there has to be a financial means test as part of what services can be offered. But within that, the commissioners do have some latitude in what's going to happen, provided that people meet that test. We didn't talk about it specifically for the vaccine because my understanding is still that the COVID vaccine is no charge. One of the biggest issues has been getting people to locations that they need to get to for medical appointments or for vaccinations. But just to close on that issue, I was very curious about the hospital trust and what is in and what is not in. And the biggest issue is this financial means test. That's there was a magistrate, I don't know if it's a decision is the right word or not, but that's the requirement that remains. So it can't just be a, sure, you can just offer service XYZ to anybody. Unfortunately, it's only folks that meet that means test. Thank you for bringing that up. Sorry.
Thanks.
Bob, to you for town manager update, please.
Thank you, Mark. First, I'd like to say that our hearts go out to Wakefield, led by Steve Mayo, their town administrator, and Doug Lyons, a former Reading product, now the superintendent. For those that have not seen the news, they lost a member of their school department today under very, very tragic circumstances. So for those that pray, a prayer for Wakefield would certainly be in order. Wakefield and Reading have an extremely close relationship in so many ways. If we had a twin brother or sister community, I think Wakefield is it. Then I want to go over to the budget because I know last meeting we had some discussions, and I want to give the board an update. Thanks for your previous guidance on 9 topics that surfaced during your meeting. I will be proposing to either fully or partially funding most of those 9 items, I think 6. As my highest priority and one that matches yours, I will fund a full-time health director in the FY22 town manager budget and work with the Board of Health to see if we can speed up this process as sufficient FY21 funds are now available. I'd like to thank Peter Morandi for accepting the challenge to serve as our interim health director last fall, and in so doing, interrupting a well-deserved retirement from another community. The ask on Peter has been even higher than I had imagined back then, as the complexities of the virus are sometimes rivaled by the complexities of federal and state response planning. Last fall, I floated the idea that public health under a strong director should be a standalone small department and be more closely aligned with our public safety team. They would continue to work collaboratively with all the other town and school departments as they do today. My budget will propose exactly that, a change to the formal town government organization structure, which is an item under the charter, and request capital funding to explore surplus space in the police department for this purpose. It's possible we'll find some surplus funds and facilities this year to get that work started. While remaining an independent department that obviously continues to work closely with the Board of Health, being proximate to our coalition and other public safety resources will help establish a strong infrastructure that I see will be needed for future success in public health. As is almost always the case, the real key will be in hiring the exact right person, which will be a huge challenge as the profession is so absorbed in pandemic response right now. My next highest priority is to add the new public library position of Director, Reading Alliance for Equity and Social Justice, ranked higher than that was requested by the board. 5 years ago this spring, I remember writing an overview to town meeting and cautioning about the divide I was beginning to see in Reading, where the need to win was overtaking the need to collaborate. I dare say that's much more apparent today. There's been a wide range of solutions that have been discussed since then, ranging in my view from doing nothing to adding an independent authority above our local elected officials. In my estimation, each of those polar opposites are poor choices, but the current path forward is a good one. This is hardly surprising since this approach was my idea in the first place as I listened to the debates of what was going on and I thought about the Arcasa model. So to be clear, it's my fault. I realize there are detractors on both proverbial sides of this issue, as the position does too much and yet not enough. I have the highest degree of confidence that under Library Director Amy Lannon and the Board of Trustees, that the position will be given the best chance of success. Amy has what I would describe as a very pragmatic view of what this position can and should be. And her view has the unanimous support, let me repeat that, the unanimous support of all town department heads. I would ask those detractors from both sides to pause for just a moment. Please stop trying to win by asserting your views that this does too much or not enough. Does Reading have a problem? Well, the fact that we are arguing about it says that we do. In the end, it's my hope that neither extreme divisive view will prevail, and the real success of this position will be a much calmer but important discussion as friends and neighbors. This is the only way the community is going to win. My budget will also take steps to allow a civil rights officer / sergeant position through promotion, but not by adding staff. We'll be adding mental health resources to Public Safety's coalition budget and hours to the public health nursing hours. Although I have to say it as an aside, the mental health resources are a very, very complex area. One of the resources Mark mentioned, interfaith, will rise in cost for the services level that we need from about $5,000 to $20,000 next year. The coalition is also looking into other resources, but I'm sure we won't have the final resource in place for this budget. We'll just do exploratory work and do the best we can. I'm certainly open to a different solution. But in this case, I don't think hiring a staff person alone would do it. Mental health is a 24/7 area. One staff person working weekdays is just not going to be the total solution. Further, and this is just sort of an aside, I know the board's received an email. DPW Director Jane Kinsella has proposed a way in which we'll be able to promote composting efforts for those residents that are interested. It's currently about 175. The topic is very complex and a direct subsidy will not work. And I'll save the rest of the details for the FY22 budget discussion. Aside from budgets, Chief Clark and Liaison Landry have asked me to report that the incident involving pictures taken with political signs and a police officer at the high school on Election Day has been resolved. Coordinating the observations of firsthand witnesses, there were 4, around the holidays took some time, but in the end, a very detailed investigation found that the officer was in violation of a department policy. The chief meted out discipline that was approved by both myself and Labor Council and accepted by the officer. The most important sentence I'm going to read on this topic follows. We are all very deeply sorry that this incident detracted from the safe elections that staff and volunteers ran under some very challenging circumstances. I want to close with reminding the board to read my meeting overview. There's a number of significant topics on your agenda for the next 2 or 3 meetings. I really want to call attention to the fact that on February 2nd, you're scheduled to hear the Birch Meadow master plan update. On Tuesday, and on one day before on Monday, if one of you or more of you can go to the Recreation Committee meeting, it's going to be covered then and previewed. So you may be able to then bring some color to the next night. Also on the 2nd, the open space plan and the issues that Karen mentioned under conservation will be reviewed. On the 16th, there'll be a pretty extensive discussion about the Walkersbrook area. In the past, that neighborhood has wanted to be advised, so we're certainly going to do that. And saving the best for last, MassDOT will be in to see you on March 2nd and describe whatever it is their final thoughts and plans are for the paving of Main Street. None of us know what their thoughts and plans are. And whether they've made a decision or they want to hear more feedback, I honestly couldn't say. And I guess the very last comment is, I did miss the end of your last meeting, but Anne has since sent out the communication policy to town council. So as soon as that comes back, we'll share it with the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions, board members? Anne.
Just want to say thank you, Bob, for that very thorough update. And for folks who have only been sort of lightly following the conversation about the equity and social justice position within the library, more information was made available to town meeting members about the proposal that the ad hoc committee had put forward in the November town meeting warrant report. That has been fine-tuned somewhat under Amy, the direction of Amy and the Library Board of Trustees, but it's substantially the same. And I just wanted to emphasize that this position would not simply serve library patrons, but would be serving, would be a resource to the town and the schools and the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Carlo?
Thanks, Mark. Bob, you mentioned DOT and the paving. Is that a separate topic of the road diet? Or is that obviously?
I'm sorry, that is the final decision, if you will, on the road diet. They still owe us a final paving coat, and they need to decide how they're going to do that, whether it's 4 lanes or a road diet. And again, I don't know if they've made the decision. I can't say.
Okay, so we'll get it. So in March, we'll get an update.
Yeah, they're going to give you an update, and they promise to send out material for the meeting at least 10 days in advance so the board can see it. So we'll all have a much better idea, honestly, when they send that out.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions, folks? All right, let's roll on. Public comment. Caitlin, do we have one person, 2 people?
One, yes.
Is it a couple of one, or is it?
Oh, yeah, I guess probably both of them.
I think it's Jackie and Mark. Let's bring them in, please. Hi, Jackie and Mark.
Hey.
Good evening. Thank you, board members. I'm Jackie McCarthy. This is my husband, Mark Delaney. We live at 26 Beacon Street. Commenting on the Auburn Street project, but first want to preface it by saying we realize this is a uniquely challenging time for our town, like a lot of other towns across the country, politically, from a public health perspective, and from a social and apparently educational perspective as well. We noted the town engineer's update in tonight's packet. We think it's actually a great example of why the select board is not an optimal forum for addressing all the issues that come along with a project of this magnitude. And that's why we support Karen Herrick's proposal to refer this project to the Permanent Building Committee or some other independent committee to allow for the kind of interactive discussion that would help for community input.
Okay. Thank you. Good to see all of you board members. Sorry, I'm talking about this subject again, but while all these issues are going around, the nitty-gritty stuff is still things we have to pay attention to because they're moving forward. It's great to see town staff seems to be focused now on replacing the water tank instead of building a cell tower. So that was good to see in the update. However, the first line in that update kind of got our attention that the town engineer is talking to town council about a letter about options for the carriers. So here is an issue with that. 5 months ago, we asked to get the RFP on the cell tower, and secondly, the lease agreement with the carriers. We got one of the two. We are still waiting on the lease agreement. Now, it's a real issue when there is cherry picking as far as what RFPs and what contracts the town has gets posted on the website. These are public records. They should be easily accessible to Reading's residents. However, as we saw with the RFP and the cell tower, it was not posted, and therefore no one knew it even existed. The same should apply in instances of a contract, which is what the lease agreement is. After a quick Google search, we discovered that the city of Boston has similar agreements with the carriers for cell antennas to be installed on city property. Those agreements are all available online to the residents. So me as a Reading resident, I can look at lease agreements between the city of Boston and cell carriers, but I can't see the lease agreements between the town and the cell carriers in the very town I live in. So here's the importance of why we want to see them. I pulled up, and I want to read 2 sentences to the board from the lease agreement with the City of Boston and Verizon Wireless. It's a 71-page agreement. In section 3.11, I'm going to read you 2 sentences. Removal or relocation of wireless facilities, which include antennas, at city's request. Verizon Wireless understands and acknowledges that the city, at any time, may require Verizon Wireless to remove or relocate all or a portion of a wireless facility, that includes antennas, located on city infrastructure at Verizon Wireless's expense on 90 days notice upon a written request from the city, if the city determines in its reasonable discretion that the removal or relocation is needed to facilitate or accommodate the construction, completion, repair, or relocation or maintenance of a city project or city facility. I suspect a similar provision like that is in the town's lease. If it's not, the lawyer who reviewed that contract probably committed malpractice. That is essential to protect the town. If that is in the town's agreement, the last 6 months we've been talking about it has been a complete waste of everybody's time because the issue's already been negotiated. My time is up.
It was up when the bell went off, but
Okay,
you were on a roll.
I'm going to wrap up 15 seconds. So we've asked for the lease agreements. I asked the chair if he could assist with this. I just want you to know, if we can't get them by the close of business this Thursday, we're going to file a FOIA request on Friday. And if we have to go through that exercise of getting information, which we've been battling about getting for 6 months, we're going to probably do other FOIA requests. And the temperature on this goes down, goes up instead of down. I don't want to be difficult, but this is where we're at. Thank you, Karen Herrick. Great idea. We hope that that's going to go a long way to addressing, these information issues that we have. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, folks. Bob?
Yeah, but earlier one of the board members asked me this question. We do have the leases. We'll make them available. I've not had a chance to read the email. I was not aware that you were asking for them earlier. I apologize. My only question is, we're in negotiations with one of the vendors, and I just want to make sure the information I provide you is the most recent.
Yeah.
So I need to find that out. I should know by tomorrow.
And we understand that there certainly may be provisions that need to be redacted for the purposes of lease negotiations. I think what we're primarily looking at with the leases is what the leases say about that exact language that we referred to from the City of Boston. What do they say about removal because of town projects?
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Not all of this is public. It's just a question of me getting you accurate and updated information.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Next on our list this evening, running business community COVID impact update, including outdoor dining. Hi, Erin.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Erin.
So I'm just going to briefly review the memo that I sent to Bob and was also in the select board packet. Mark, is that okay with you?
Yes, please.
Okay. So in brief, these are some general economic development updates. The outdoor dining application is available online right now on the economic development webpage. This outdoor dining application is specifically for public property related to the select board policy. So I have been in touch with many restaurants, actually all of our restaurants, and sometimes repeatedly to find out, to basically encourage people to apply. At this time, there are no tier 2 applications at this time.
Can you just define that for us for a second, Erin?
Sure. Tier 2 applications specifically are applications where restaurants propose to use public spaces beyond the sidewalk. Does that make sense?
Right. So when we talked about a parklet, is that a tier 2 or a tier 1?
It's tier 2, so it's beyond the sidewalk.
Got it.
Okay. So we, again, have no applications at this time for tier 2, which would be under the select board policy, be reviewed by the select board. Those tier 2 applications would be reviewed by you. Moving on to outdoor dining, a bistro table program. Last year, we deployed those green bistro tables that you saw downtown. Those will be deployed again in the springtime and possibly expanded, which I'm really excited about. Those were really helpful to businesses last year, and I think they'll be helpful this year as well. There are a couple of opportunities. Actually, one has passed already, but I've been speaking to a lot of different businesses to help them get through the application process. There were 2 small business grant opportunities at the time that I wrote our memo here. One was the MGCC sector-specific relief grant program that's related to COVID relief. The application window has now closed as of, I believe, Monday. It was extended because of a computer glitch with their application process. But so that gave people a little bit of extra time. Specifically, that grant application granted up to $75,000 to each to individual businesses, and specifically targeted businesses with that were restaurants, bars, indoor recreation, gyms, fitness centers, personal services, retail, event support like photographers and professionals of that nature. So I did a lot of, I did help many businesses apply to that, and I'm really happy that so many Reading businesses did apply. So that, again, that window is now closed for that specific grant application. Awards are expected to be announced in early February, and those grants will be made sometime in February. We do have an open application for some grant funding available for businesses. That amount is up to $10,000 per business. There's more information on the Economic Development webpage. On the left-hand side of that page, there's a grants button where all this information is in great detail. That Micro Enterprise Assistance Program is a rolling application. Again, that funding is actually part of that $210,000 that I applied for and received as part of our regional consortium when COVID relief funding was first becoming available at the state level. So we still do have funding in that pool available, and applications will continue to be rolling until all of that money has been expended. To date, 6 Reading businesses have been awarded a total of $60,000 in grant funds, and that's been incredibly helpful. I do also want to say that some of the eligibility requirements for the specific grant were really challenging, and as a result of our regional collaboration and advocacy, we were able to convince DHCD of a change in their eligibility requirements. So there's more updated information that will be coming out hopefully in this next week or 2. So I can update everyone on that. I'll provide that information online as well. Hopefully those changes, eligibility requirements, will make this funding more available. Specifically, the eligibility requirements for household income were a challenge, and some other ones as well. So I'm happy to see those changes. I think we'll have more Reading businesses be able to qualify for this funding. I thought this information was interesting on PPP loan data that I wanted to share with the board. As of August 2020, which seems very far away right now, 68.3% of Reading establishments received a PPP loan. So I just want to share that with the board and the public because that number is pretty staggering. And also really great that there is an opportunity and there continues to be opportunity for grants and loan programs to help our small businesses. Looking at the data from that MAPC provided, that there were 429 total loans in the town of Reading. And because of initial reporting in August with there weren't exact amounts, I should say, of each one of these loans. But what we can say is businesses in Reading received between $23.7 million and a maximum of $37.4 million that was borrowed from Reading businesses. And about $13.4 million were to small businesses with less than 50 employees. Looking at the raw data, I would say that the small businesses were really in the range of micro businesses, if you will, less than 5 employees. So that's helpful to see that I know our local and regional banks worked really hard to help our Reading businesses be able to apply. And a quick update, the SBA is currently accepting PPP loans, as you probably already know, from participating lenders in another round of PPP loans. I do also want to say that the Chamber of Commerce is holding, the Reading North Reading Chamber of Commerce is holding an information session this Friday, January 22nd, from 10 to 12 a.m., which is free for anyone who is interested in participating and listening more. Again, that information session is about this new round of PPP loans. And generally, for more business support and resources, I've modified the Reading Economic Development webpage business incentive and resources button to add more support and resources and more updated information. And I would encourage anyone interested in any SBA information or other economic development partner information to actually sign up for alerts because there's information is constantly changing. I'd almost say daily at this point now, with a new round of federal and state resources available. But I do try to keep the website up to date as well. And I think with that, those are my updates, general economic development updates.
Awesome. Erin, on the back to the tier 1, tier 2 thing just for a moment.
Sure.
Has the state or has the governor renewed any of the changes in alcohol policy related to outdoor dining?
Yeah, so
did it extend into 2021 or did it get kind of stuck in 2020?
Bob, can I defer that question to you?
Sorry.
I've not heard that it's extended, and honestly, I've not even heard it discussed. I think for some folks, the spring just seems too far away, but now's the time it should be discussed.
Yeah, I wonder if people...
I will ask at my next opportunity, and Erin,
Please.
feel free to do the same.
I will.
Yeah, I wonder if people are holding back a little bit without knowing what the answer to that question is, because it's a different equation if it's food only.
You know, at one of the state-led conferences calls, I want to say in early December, I asked the question and they said they had every intention to do it, but it's, as Ann knows, it's just a question of so much on the plate. So, you know, I think it will happen, just like the election bill.
Other board members, any questions or comments? No, great. Oh, Carla, please.
Good question, Erin. Thanks, Mark. You mentioned no applications for tier 2. And what about tier 1? Anything for tier 1?
We have no pending applications right now for tier 1, but I do expect that some restaurants that did have sidewalk dining last year will likely reapply to renew this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we if I can speak for myself, maybe other board members too, I think we would certainly encourage people to come apply sooner rather than later and do whatever planning they can. Sorry, Karen.
I would second that, Mark. I would like to eat a lot of meals outside in Reading this year. Please come and apply. And Erin, thank you for that. That's an astounding amount of aid that Reading businesses were able to get. Thank you for laying that out for us. Appreciate that. And all your support and for being ahead of our request to update your website. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it's all good.
Any other board comments? Okay, great. Let's roll on. I think that brings us to parking. Am I right?
Almost.
Oh, shoot, what did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry. Mass Downtown Initiatives. Sorry. Yeah, and Business Improvement District update. Sorry, I just was so anxious to get to parking. I'm sorry. Sorry, Julie, hang on.
Really quickly, we staff continue to work with a technical consultant who's grant funded, which we're really excited about. And there is a steering committee that is working on a lot of different things right now. And our work we keep forging ahead. So if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I also don't want to take a lot of time away from other things tonight.
Okay. Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. Erin, thanks for all the information in the packet. It was really helpful to be able to sort of see that all in advance. I had a question about the bid program or initiative. I'm not sure sort of how to refer to that. Do you have a timeline for implementation, or is there going to be sort of more discussion before something like that gets off the ground? I'm sorry for those watching at home. BID stands for Business Improvement District. I'll let Erin talk more about it.
Yeah, so a business improvement district is a legally established and contiguous geographic area with which property owners initiate, manage, and finance supplemental services for the benefit of everyone who lives, works, or visits in the district. I would say that there is a steering committee of property owners, business owners, and others who are working on this initiative with support from the town. But the leadership really is with the steering committee of property owners and other community members. I don't have a specific timeline, but they are just now getting together, and it's really a citizen-led effort.
So this would be separate and distinct from the chamber?
Yeah, so I can, again, there's an FAQ that I provided in the packet here. I'm trying to find that question, the answer to that question. And so the chamber is
If you want,
what was that?
I can put it on screen if you want to guide me to the right page.
Oh, sure. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here. It's page 3 and page 4. And I've also provided this information on the town of Reading's website on the economic development page under Reimagine Reading as well. So people can certainly refer back to that as well. I should say that this effort to have a downtown organization is really important. As an organization like this, there are many bids, I would say, there are many bids across the world. There are many bids in Massachusetts. And the purpose of a business improvement district is really for businesses to pool their funding together and for property owners to pool their funding together, again, to provide supplemental services. That could be in the realm of marketing, that could be in placemaking, that could be a variety of different initiatives. And it's really, again, a citizen-led effort to put together a work plan and affiliated nonprofit organization to work through all those details. And again, this organization is separate and distinct from something like a chamber or a Rotary. The missions are different and the organization structures are very different as well.
Thank you very much for clarifying.
Erin, is that the grant that you noted here that we just received, this December 8th letter? So that's a new $25,000 grant? It
is.
Cool. Is that something, do you think that this will happen? Is it kind of in this calendar year? Is that the right time frame to think?
Yeah, so I think I would say that that's the right time frame. The steering committee will be meeting soon. They are going to be working on the following things: the work plan, looking at district boundaries, establishing a budget and fee structure, really thinking about what a work plan could be for the organization itself. There is a legislative process, as you know. There's a signature campaign involved, and the organization itself needs to have bylaws, articles of organization, committee structure, and apply for non-for-profit status. The town is also involved in a supportive role. So again, we've applied for grants to provide a technical consultant to help this group of citizens put together all these details and organization signature campaign and things like that to be able to go through this process. The select board has the opportunity, the select board as part of this process has the ability to say yes or no to the bid. But again, this is a citizen-led effort, so there's no modification of the bid or anything of that sort related to the town in any way or with the select board. It's just a simple yes or no.
And will you be reaching out to community members, business community members?
Yeah, so the steering committee will certainly reach out, and there is a process and lots of outreach will be happening with that steering committee. And again, this technical consultant who's grant funded will be providing technical assistance for all those elements.
Thanks. Carla, did I see your hand a second ago? Oh, yep, sorry, Carla.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I was at that Reimagine Reading, it seems so long ago.
Yeah.
It was a great meeting, and a few of the towns that were there, one had a bid, one had, the name escapes me, another Beverly had, I forget who had what, but
sure.
I personally, I think a bid is a big undertaking for a town this size. Obviously, I wish them a lot of luck. There is a financial component to this, obviously, as you mentioned, and I don't know when they determine how much is going to be needed or how much they can get through grant funding. But do you know, are you involved, Aaron? I'm talking to Aaron, sorry. Are you involved in these meetings or attending these meetings, or is it totally a private citizen group?
Yeah, so this is a private citizen group, but I will certainly be attending these meetings, and I'm managing the grants and helping with our technical consultant and coordinating all the details. So eventually there will be more of a transition to the steering committee, but I will certainly be participating for the most part.
So can you provide us updates maybe then?
Absolutely.
That'd be
yeah,
helpful.
I think the steering committee, I would encourage the steering committee to come forward with updates.
Thank you.
Vanessa?
Thanks, Mark. Aaron, two questions for you. Is the town, will there be, as part of the bid program, is there a financial implication to the town? That's question one. And question two is, I did read through the information provided in the packet. I did note that these are common in cities, and obviously we're a large town. So what would be the benefit of having something like this in Reading? So
yeah, sure. So the town is, so I see a business improvement district as really being helpful and really a necessary tool for economic resilience and recovery, particularly related to COVID, and to continue to help our businesses in a variety of different ways. I would say that some comparable examples of business improvement districts in towns of similar size and nature would include the town of Amherst, the town of Hudson, the town of Hyannis. We also have some similarities from a long-term perspective related to some of the bigger bids as well. So I'd say from an ambitious perspective, we do have the Eastern Gateway, and we do have downtown, and we do have a train station, and we have some really interesting long-term opportunities. So that's something to really consider and think about through this process. But from a smaller perspective, I would say there are many towns that have business improvement districts, and there's so many variations and varieties of ways to set one up and talk about. Reimagine Reading was really helpful for us over a year's worth of work and 1,500 respondents and many public meetings when we could meet in person, which was really fun. And we learned a lot through that process. And I think a lot of the details that came out of that public engagement process are still true today. And, that will obviously inform the work plan for this business improvement district and committee to take a look at.
Thanks.
And is there a financial component for the town?
Yeah,
is
so
the town on the hook?
Yeah, so the town certainly continues to provide services like we always do. And typically with a bid, there's a memorandum of agreement that will outline baseline services and any supplemental services that the town would like to provide. Sometimes towns do provide in-kind contributions. That could be like DPW hanging lights, for example, or it could be financial contributions.
Bob?
As we proceed, I'd like to hear more about the town's role in this. Before we get to the point where we have to give an up or down vote.
Oh, absolutely.
As one member, yeah, I would want more information.
Absolutely.
Bob?
Thanks, Mark. Another example could be, for instance, DPW plows the sidewalks downtown in front of the businesses, and that doesn't happen in most communities. So is it a financial component? It's not going to be a big new one, I can tell you that. Yeah. The other real advantage to this, from my perspective, and I think from the board's, is to focus the communication with the business community. You kind of saw last summer how difficult it is to focus. And this would just be another element to help us deal with a group, that represents a number of businesses. And that's not something to underestimate. It's very difficult to deal with all businesses on an individual basis.
Karen.
Thank you, Mark. Erin, my takeaway from reading about the bid is that it is a program that is really designed to engage the property owners. How has the response been? These aren't necessarily small businesses, although one would presume they would be interested in making a more viable business area. But it's another way to look at it is these are property owners working to make sure that their rents stay high and their businesses stayed filled. So I would think the key to a program like this is having a number of significant property owners signed on. And so are you at the point where you feel like people are willing to sign on, or is it too early?
Yeah, the steering committee is not yet in that process.
Okay.
So it's a little early.
And is my understanding correct? That we're
yes, that property owners, I believe it's 60% of property owners within the geographic area need to sign on.
Okay, and that's not something that we've seen before. All of our outreach has been to individual businesses for the most part. It would be wonderful if we got property owners, and we currently have a brand new building down on Main Street with lots of for lease signs and lots of empty storefronts. So yeah, I guess
we're working diligently on that.
I know, I'm sure you are. I guess to Vanessa's point, we just need to make sure that we've got enough resources to be able to help them, because you're going to be in the sales business. You're selling, you're doing business development. You're selling them on this concept that's in the best interest for them, and you're only so okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think honestly, having a bid business improvement district does help in the marketing piece as well. So when tenants, for example, when I have conversations with property owners and I talk to them about this particular thing, this is a sales piece for their tenants as well. Free marketing and programming at my doorstep and other kinds of services, like maybe it's snow plowing, or maybe it's trash pickup, or maybe it's something else completely. Those things are very valuable to prospective tenants as well. So I'm really excited about it.
I'm sorry. Ann, did I see your hand up? Nope, sorry. That was a flash light. Sorry. Great. Oh, sorry, Karen.
One more comment. I'm thinking about this, and I thank you, select board members, for asking really good questions. At some point, if we think that this could be a really helpful part of getting our downtown business areas to survive this pandemic, maybe we can lend some support as a board to Erin's effort. And, you know, I might put that out there.
Awesome. Thanks. Vanessa?
Thanks, Mark. I'll be honest and say I have some, I mean, it's a private organization, private residents, businesses putting it together. I'll be honest and say, reading through the information you provided, I did have some concerns. You know, we do have triple net leases. And so my concern would be most of these property owners are not on site. Are they just passing down those costs to businesses that are already struggling right now? They do currently have access to the chamber. Are they going to be asked to sort of pay double dues in order to participate? This makes me a little nervous for what it might ask of our small businesses at a time when it's already tough. I mean, they can absolutely pursue it as if it is in their best interest. I'm not there yet.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Great, thanks. Thanks, Aaron. Now, oh, I'm sorry, Carla, I saw your hand. Oh, you're muted.
I was just saying bye if Aaron was leaving.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'll still be here in the background.
Great. Okay, let's turn it over to Julie to PTTTF and Park and other things beginning with P.
Great, yeah, so hi everyone, thanks for having me back. You seem really jazzed to talk about parking, so I hope I don't disappoint. Basically, there was a memo I wrote back in November, and I don't know if it was in a prior packet, but it was definitely provided in the packet for tonight. And it kind of talks about maybe taking a new approach to how we look at our downtown parking system in 2021 and potentially also going forward. Staff, as you guys remember, came to you, I think about 5 times over the course of 2019 and 2020. And at each meeting, we kind of heard there were like a lot of questions and concerns, and we needed to do more outreach. And we kept doing that and doing that again and trying to get you all the information we could get you. And we got to a point where we weren't sure that like continuing in this same pattern and expecting a different result was really going to be the right way to go. So we thought maybe we would propose a new approach, maybe a more volunteer-led approach to, you know, looking at the downtown parking system and coming up with some solutions. We also heard a lot from residents and stakeholders in the area that they didn't feel like they had enough notification and enough involvement in the process. And so we really wanted to maybe have a more robust outreach stakeholder process that maybe is a volunteer-led process. So I just proposed this idea. PTTTF staff are mostly on board with it, and we of course would provide technical assistance and work with a consultant as well. So we would still be very involved. And the idea for anyone who's watching who didn't read the packet, I should have mentioned, is having the select board establish the Parking Advisory and Recommendations Committee, which is PARC, which I have to give credit to Bob for that one, because that was not originally what I had come up with. So, but it is PARC for short, and it would be an advisory committee of 7 people, the way that it's currently designed in this proposal. And those people would be a select board member, a CPDC member, and then residents of the downtown or greater downtown area, representatives of businesses, business owners, business managers, chamber members, and then employees of the downtown or residents at large who just have like an interest in this kind of like logistical untangling, let's call it. And we would have a series of public meetings and report back to this, or they would have a series of public meetings. We would help, of course, with all the open meeting law compliance, and then report back to the select board at various times during the year. And also we would help with the outreach to stakeholders and the public. So that's how it's outlined, just for you to consider, discuss. If you think this is a terrible idea and you want us to keep going the way we were doing it the last year plus, that's also still on the table. We're happy to keep working on the effort. We feel like we did make some really good progress, and we feel like we do have some really good ideas. So however you want us to do it, we're open to any approach.
Vanessa.
Julie, thanks. I think the park idea, and credit to Bob for the cute name, better than the PTTF abbreviation. I think it's a great idea. I've already heard from a resident who would love to be part of it. I've been in contact with numerous residents about this. If the board decides to move forward with this, I'd love to be the person to represent the board for that. But yeah, I think it's great. So thank you for putting that idea together.
Other board members' comments, questions? Carl.
Thanks, Julie. I agree with Vanessa. I also think it's a pretty good idea. I don't know if 7's the right number. I think that might be a little bit too small. I know you want to make it manageable, but, and I heard you mention the word consulting. Why do we need a consultant?
So there are a lot of details involved in each component of this, for which having someone who has training and a lot of expertise in traffic and transportation and parking has been really useful to us as we've gone through this, and we think could be useful to us as we continue. And, a lot of times those specific consultants with that, level of technical expertise have helped other communities with similar challenges. And so then that kind of ties us into what's happening in the region and keeps us, I guess, like, I don't want to say relevant and competitive, but because that's not really the goal with this, but just, it brings ideas to the table from other communities that could be really helpful to like how we look at things, giving us new perspectives. So.
Thank you. So maybe this answer from a question from Mark and Bob. So this would be similar to an ad hoc committee. We would we would form a committee, this park committee. Is that correct?
Yes, I would envision this as an ad hoc committee. It has a finite life and a task.
Right. Yeah. And does the board, I mentioned the 7 number might not be enough as far as representation of the downtown residents and other stakeholders. Does anyone else on the board agree with that number? Think it should be higher or lower? I think it should be a little bit higher myself, but I'm open to what Julie thinks is best as well, but what the other board members think.
Are there particular people that you think should be on here that aren't, or is it just kind of more of the folks here?
I thank you. I like the representation, but I don't think 7. And where if it's one of us, none of us own a business in downtown or work in downtown. Yes, we're on the board and we can provide our perspective because we've been dealing with this and previous boards have dealt with this, but not to say that we shouldn't be part of it, but it's kind of taking a spot away from a downtown business or a resident. I'm not saying we shouldn't be involved. I'm saying so that cuts it down to 6. CPDC, so that cuts down to 5. That's where I'm going with this. I think you don't want to make it too big, but I think it's 7, including 2 people from 2 different boards. This is my opinion.
Board member thoughts? Karen?
It's hard to say what the right number is. I agree that if it gets too big, you're going to have a hard time making decisions.
I'm sorry, I saw, yeah.
You could make it 9. That would be comparable to the size of the finance committee, and then rather than 5 other members, just have 7 other members. And that would, provide some greater voice to residents and business owners from downtown and employees, etc.
Vanessa?
And stole my thunder. That was going to be my suggestion as well.
I'm just kind of thinking out loud for a minute. I mean, I come back to Julie's point. I thought we were making some very good progress in terms of what to do already. We know that this is one of those things where we will not be able to satisfy all of the people no matter what. It just is going to be one of those things. We want to make sure that we've heard the viewpoints, that we understand kind of the different scenarios, and then we're going to have to make a decision on what to do. So I think lots of people are going to want to have input and have their say in terms of here's what their concerns are and things. I don't want to make an unruly group of people, unruly in terms of the number of people, so that you can't come to a decision, and then it's going to come back to the full board anyway, and again we'll have a large discussion. I want to put this on a path to a solution, and I like the idea of getting more people engaged and giving people time to think about it and come back. I'm also a little concerned that I want to make sure we get new information as a result of the process, so that we actually can make a decision about it. And I'm a drop concerned that there's a comment here. It'll be on or before July 31st of 2022. Even now that feels like a long time from now. I don't know how other board members feel about that. Vanessa.
I see your point. I mean, this, because of COVID, I think it's got delayed a lot longer than we had anticipated. We were anticipating and initiating this some time ago, and the staff has now been working on this for literally years. So my thanks to all of them, because this is massive. That said, I think the data and information that the staff was using when this started, 2+ years ago now, is changed. I think the reality of what parking is now and what it'll be a year from now when more people return to work, I don't think the parking demand is going to be the same. I think that needs to be taken into consideration. We heard pretty strongly from neighbors who were affected that they weren't happy with what was promoted. So while I see your point about sort of not wanting to drag this on indefinitely, I think if we're going to do a project of this magnitude, it deserves the extra 6 months to consider more recent impacts and to consider the residents who are going to be most impacted by this.
Bob.
Yeah, in terms of the time frame, we're also severely impacted by how we can gather people and communicate with them. So, a year from now, can we have a real neighborhood meeting with actual neighbors? I sure hope so. But we have to at least know that that's going to be a challenge in terms of communication.
Thoughts, Carla? And then Karen.
Mark, I appreciate what you said, and I'm after you made your comments. Now I'm struggling with because Julie and staff have made so much progress, and I agree. Obviously, we all know that we're not going to make everyone happy, and there's going to be some problems with it. That's why it's going to be called parking management. We can come back to it and change something what's not working. So I guess I don't know. I do like the park idea, but Julie's been doing that. Julie's staff has already been doing that, and I know some of us went to those meetings in person before all this happened. So it would probably be the same stakeholders, some of the services, some of the retailers. So I guess now I'm on the fence. I like what everyone said, but I think we have to bite the bullet eventually. And as time goes on, these buildings will get filled up with at least residents. I don't know about businesses yet, who's going to occupy all these empty spots, but in the coming year, all the buildings will be occupied by residents. So what challenge is that going to impose on the neighborhoods? We can anticipate it, but until post office, I heard, well, people are starting to move in. The EMARC building is coming along pretty quickly. The building across from where I live looks full. The Met is full. So I don't know. I think this has been long overdue, but sorry, that's
yeah.
I think I made it more confusing for myself, but I want to move forward. I do want to move forward.
Karen, you had some comments.
I'm laser focused tonight. Julie, this question is for you. I know parking is a lot of work and it has a life of its own. I do not want to drown out the very important goal we have of EV chargers in town. Can you help me understand how we could make sure they don't drown in a parking committee?
So I can just really give a quick update on that. I have had some communication with our MLD staff, and they're actively working to find some locations downtown, and we've been kind of giving them our feedback, and they're looking to see where they have poles and where the wires are running, because that would make the cost of it, like a lot less. And they have indicated that they have budgeted for a certain amount of charging stations in each of their service communities in 2021, and that they see it as a marketing expense. So, if you build it, they will come, like that people will feel more comfortable purchasing EVs if they know that they can charge it somewhere near their house. And that's exactly what happened for me. That's why I have one. So we're like in active communication of trying to find locations, and you keep bringing it up, and we think it's important as well. And I don't see it falling off the table or off the radar at any point. And I do think there might be some funding available if needed for some of these things as well.
Okay. But we're spending a lot of time just talking about what this potential new parking task force would look like. And so, but your great work. Thank you. I don't want it to be dependent upon like how many members show up and all their opinions. We can certainly, of any parking strategy, like we'll have more EV chargers, and that is definitely a key component, but we're just talking about a goal for this year, the first one. I just looking for assurances that is not going to be dependent upon this like new type of task force that we're trying to put together. I hope I'm not the only select board member that doesn't want our EV charger getting stuck in a parking committee.
Hear, hear.
Okay.
So you're saying you don't want it parked in committee?
Yes, I need yes, from Beacon Hill to give you all the right words to say. Thank you.
A few motorheads, we could say we don't want to cast a pall over the situation. Parking pall is what holds the car in park.
Can I ask a question to clarify? Because I'm a little. Is the question, Julie, for us that you want to know if we support this park task force idea? Is that what you're looking for from us?
Yeah, I think so. If you want us to like shift and try to take a new approach to this, and have it be more of a volunteer-led kind of effort.
Can I just pull it back to a higher level just for a sec? I think the issue is how to move the parking forward. The question is whether or not this is an approach that will help. So the issue is how do we move things ahead? I think that's where we want to kind of drive to. Vanessa and then Bob.
So as we saw from the last hearing that we did, however many months ago, when we heard from very vocal neighbors who hadn't heard about this, if we move forward as we have been, and we don't involve the neighbors, then we're going to have another hearing with very angry residents. I would very much like to avoid that for our sake, for the residents' sake, and for the staff's sake. So if we can do this in a collaborative nature so that people feel heard, their input very well could solve and address issues that maybe we, the board, or the staff haven't thought of because they're not as familiar with the streets and they don't live on them, let's do it. If it means, there's a few months delay over what we had planned, I think it'll be time well spent. So I firmly support Julie's proposal for this task force. And I think it'll help get us where we need to be with happier residents.
Bob?
I think it's very difficult for this board to make enough time on your agendas to do what an ad hoc committee can do. It's just really simple. You could schedule 4 or 5 meetings and you won't do as much as what an ad hoc committee could do over the next several months. And it's not easy for you to find that agenda time. So, I think a lot about the Eaton Lakeview neighbors and how they effectively organized, I guess I'll say. And again, they focused the communication That's what's necessary. Sometimes you need the neighbors to help you. We, as town staff, more than most communities, we're kind of asked to be top down about a lot of things. And sometimes you really need to solve them bottom up, and you have to engage the people where they are. And staff can't always do that on a night or a weekend. It has to be grassroots to get your best result. Now, it will go a little slower, but I think that it greatly improves the odds for success, or at least the feeling of being included in the discussion along the way.
To that end, would it make sense to do this process, but a little bit faster than this timeline of 18 months? And to think about it, so, I'd love to say September of this year, and that probably is way overly aggressive. But maybe by year end would make sense. Things are definitely going to change, no question, but when they're going to change, we can't answer. And we're going to get to October, November, December, and say, oh, things are changing. We should wait another 6 months. I think we need to kind of come up with a plan that makes the most sense. We need to act on it, and to some extent, adjust as we find things that aren't to our liking. The original structure of this, if I'm remembering correctly, is that there's a big problem with getting people able to shop and find parking downtown. That was kind of the impetus for many of the things that we're talking about here. And what we learned is that we came up with some solutions that looked into residential areas. The residents didn't feel that they had a chance to participate in the discussion, and that's where we got bogged down. So I don't want to say, okay, well, let's look at it for 18 months. I'm just concerned that, it's just saying, don't worry, let it go for a while, because I think it'll just continue to meander down the road, part of the fun. I'd love to see it happen. I'm all in favor of encouraging people to get together and talk. I think however many members there are on the group, their challenge is going to be to reach out into the communities and get the information that they need. And I agree, if that's a better mechanism than we can do as a few, great. Let's encourage the residents and the businesses to do that. That's awesome. But even if they were going to Zoom, once a month and then try to have a few public meetings, I can't see 18 months as a reasonable time frame. I think it's got to be quicker.
Can I clarify really quick,
Please.
Mark? So the reason for the 18-month time frame, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said, that it should be quicker than that. But I wasn't sure when I wrote this memo when you would take this up on your agenda, and then how quickly a park advisory and ad hoc committee would be formed. So I wanted to just give a longer horizon in case it took a few months for us to actually get this committee established and get the work underway. But I do agree with you that I hope it can be much quicker than that, and that's why it would sunset, July 31st would hopefully be the farthest out that we would go.
Do you think it's, from when it started, and given that it needs to be by Zoom for a while anyway, that 9 to 12 months is a reasonable window? Does it sound like a reasonable planning window?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot depends on who's involved and what kind of feedback we hear and what other information we need to gather. And if we're talking about getting new data, we were already thinking of gathering some additional data related to commuters and things. I mean, that's going to be not happening probably anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, I think it depends. I like the flexibility of having the date July 31st, 2022, like with the goal of finishing way before that. But like we saw with the last, year, I think we started this process in September, October of 2019, that, there's always more information that's needed and there's unpredictable things that happen, like a pandemic. And so I was just trying to give us a little bit of flexibility and leeway in case there's, unforeseen challenges that arise.
That won't happen, not to worry. Okay, Bob.
Yeah, the other part of this is on the back end, once an ad hoc committee has reached a conclusion, they still have to present it to the board, and you may not want them to disappear for a while as the board has a discussion. So I don't think any of us really know what the right time frame is.
Yeah.
Depending on the changes, some of the changes are best decided, I'll say by November, December, if they're going to be implemented in the following spring or summer. But again, it's so hard to know what the back and forth is going to be, both from their perspective and then from yours.
Would it make sense to give it a kind of a target as part of its charter? Say, hey,
No,
here's what we're
I think you could give it a December 31st date, and then you can always extend ad hoc committees, and maybe that gives the ad hoc committee the message that, don't worry, you're not going to be hung out to dry for a really long time. We just need you for this period of time, and then see what happens. None of us can really know that.
Yeah. I mean, I think this makes sense. I think we have the right constituents that we're talking to, or not just constituents, I guess the parties involved. And you know, if we add a couple of people to it, I'm fine with that too. I really think adding some sort of time is of the essence piece is important.
I mean, I'm fine with that. We've been talking for about 20 minutes about a task force. You know, let's go. December 31st, that's fine. If we extend it, we need to extend it, but the task force isn't even, you know, made yet.
So what do we, if the board is interested in pursuing this as a task force, what do we need to do to initiate it? I assume we need to take a vote to initiate a task force comprised approximately comprised of this many members. Here's where they're going to come from. We want to vote that tonight. Is that the right approach?
If a majority of the board agrees in concept, I'd suggest you let us refer to town council just to make sure the wording's okay. And then you don't need to hold a hearing, so you could just vote at your next meeting even. But we may as well have town council review it before you actually vote on wording, just in case.
That sounds reasonable. Vanessa?
We need to make really certain that if this is an official ad hoc committee, that anyone who is a representative from a business or an employee of a business is also a resident of the town.
And so given the point that was brought up earlier about property owners, then we're going to leave a group of people out.
Yeah, or a property owner.
Yep.
They can participate in an advisory capacity.
They have to be residents.
Okay, so what's the feeling of the majority of the board? Pursue this?
Yeah.
Kind of a December timeframe? Yep, Carl, you good?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
MVP, Andrew.
Good evening, guys. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Is it okay for me to share my screen, Mark, or would you want to do that?
Please,
Great.
Why don't you take over?
All right. So I'm excited to give you guys an update and summary on the town's Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program, better known as MVP. And I just wanted to start by summarizing what MVP is, and that is that it's a state designation for communities that have applied to the program and gone through the community resilience building process, which I will explain in just a minute. It's a two-phase approach, with phase one being a planning and community process, and phase two being known as action grants, which allows to build on the recommendations that came out of phase one. 89% of communities in Massachusetts are designated as MVP, so it's a very competitive program. And I do want to clarify that this program is to help mitigate the impacts and expected impacts of climate change, and not exactly prevention of climate change, such as reducing greenhouse gases. That can be a part of any grant program, but it's not the main goal of the MVP. Again, it's to mitigate the impacts that we know are coming from climate change. So why did Reading pursue an MVP designation? If you're designated as an MVP community, it allows you to gain points towards other state grant programs such as MassWorks, Housing Choice, and MDI. A few of those you'll see familiar in that we've gotten the MDI twice already in the last 2 years. Housing Choice we applied for about 2 years ago now, and we'll be looking to reapply again in 2021. So this designation will only help in that effort. And then also, after designation, being allowed to apply for action grants can give us money to assess the vulnerability of the impacts, and to also prioritize actions to build our resilience to climate change impacts. We have a number of plans from different departments, including planning, DPW, engineering, local boards such as the CAC, RMLD has a local energy action plan, and all of these plans have key recommendations and next steps that MVP can help initiate. On to the next slide. So where are we now? This is actually perfect timing to provide an update because we submitted the planning grant award almost a year to the date today. We were awarded the planning grant in February of 2020. We worked with our consultant in Weston and Sampson to go through the CRB process, which was completed in spring. We finalized our report in June, which was submitted to the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, who manages the grant, and we received our official designation in October. Took some time, but that was to be expected this year. So we are now lined up to initiate phase 2, which is action grants as mentioned, and the next round is expected to open in spring 2021, which we are trying to line ourselves up for. Just to provide you some background information on phase 1 and what we went through. Again, that's the planning grant portion of the process, and we were awarded $21,000 to go through that. It helped us hire a consultant in Weston and Sampson, who is great to work with, very professional, helped us in every portion of the process, and helped initiate the CRB process. So we had a very cross-departmental review and process, which helped us engage the community in late May. As mentioned, in spring, we held 3 different workshops on 3 different days, which was publicized in papers, websites, social media, and blasts from local boards. Workshops include discussion on the impacts to our infrastructure, impacts to our environment, and also social and health impacts from climate change. We've been designated, so now our task to maintain designation is to provide EEA an annual report every summer. Based on the process that we went through, we were able to determine our highest priority hazards here in town, which were found to be intense rain and flooding, extreme drought and temperature, snow impacts and blizzards, and wind-related hazards. We identified these vulnerabilities and strengths of the town that we have so that we can be better prepared for the impacts. The core matrix was developed and determined priorities in the short, medium, and long term. And that can all be found on the website, which I will provide a link to on my last slide here. So phase 2 action grants, the big stuff. This is where we are now and what we're looking to line up for. Action grants have a wide range of uses. They can be used for infrastructure improvements, redesign and study. They can be used to acquire land that would help improve resilient objectives. They can be used to restore any wetland area or impacted area, and they can also be used to update our local bylaws and design guidelines and regulations. The average action grant was about $400,000. You can apply up to $2 million, but that would have to meet a lot of things, and I would expect that would be a regional application. There is a 25% match requirement by the municipality, but it's key to note that that can be in cash, in staff hours, or from other grants that aren't awarded by the state. So there's some flexibility in that match requirement. And it's also important to note that you can apply for more than 1 action grant a year, but you just have to have the staff capacity to do so. An example, planning could apply for 1, and DPW could also apply for an action grant as long as they have the staff to handle it. So potential in 2021 for Reading that we've been talking about recently is updates to our subdivision rules and regulations, which could be used to incorporate language of low impact development and green infrastructure. It's key to note that we do this through the CPDC and any subdivision application, but it would be good to actually get it in language in the regulations themselves. We've discussed any potential on the floodplain bylaw updates, which CPDC is interested in some background research on, so I'll be helping with that. And this is a good one through engineering, in that a stormwater design at Millette is being done. They've been contracted to do a 75% of that design phase, and it will help increase storage and water quality at the land area. So a lot of potential in 2021 and going beyond as we continue to look to line up for capital projects. And this is just a key slide to show how many communities are MVP designated and how competitive it really is. You'll see that our coordinator is Michelle Roden. She's extremely helpful as we continue to look at action grants, and that she'll help us line up the application and what may help. She's extremely responsive and just a pleasure to work with, and was there through our CRB process and all. And our last slide provides some links, the MVP webpage on the Reading site, which includes our grant application, the risk matrix, and our final report. The Massachusetts MVP page, which shows numerous examples of action grants, and it really is just a great site to look at and see the wide variety of uses that action grants can be used for. ResilientMass.org helped provide the climate data that Weston and Sampson used, and nature-based solutions, which is a key component of any action grant that they will look for. So that was a quick and brief summary. I know you had it in your packets. I wanted to try to be quick so I can answer any questions, which I am happy to do so now.
Thanks, Andrew. One question, does this work tie together, or how does this work tie together with the emergency management plan of the town?
So it is in line with the hazmat plan. Some communities even do them in conjunction with each other, and we use that plan as reference for any climate impacts that we know have happened in Reading. Our report isn't due to be updated until 2022, but we could certainly use MVP designation to help with that effort when we do get there as well.
Thanks, Andrew. Other questions, comments, board members? Karen? Karen, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, you froze my screen. It might have been me. There's a lot of information packed in that presentation. Thank you. If I want to find out exactly what kind of basic questions. Have we received a grant and we spent money on things already? And is there a place on our website where I could go to find out that information?
Yes, so we received 21,000 to go through the planning phase, and that is on the readingma.gov/MVP page. That produced our final report and the risk matrix, which summarizes all the impacts we expect and what could be updated in the short, medium, or long-term future.
Okay, sorry. So planning, we have invested in planning so far. So we've got a planning document. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Ann?
I just wanted to say thank you to Andrew for that presentation. It was very well done.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, folks. I'm going to suggest that we take 5 minutes just to kind of stretch our legs, and then let's come back, go into recess till 9:15, and we'll come back and then we'll dig in on the water tank. All right, so we are in recess till 9:15.
answer him, but her computer froze up. That email was just lagging, so he spoke at your last meeting, and that's what his request was.
Yeah.
But she hasn't been able to answer him yet.
Yeah, his request was January 3rd. I can respond to him.
Okay.
I'm sorry, last meeting was what, Jan 4?
I'm sorry, Mark, what was that?
January 4th would have been our last meeting.
5th.
5th, thank you. I have his actual request right here. Let me just make sure. Yeah, came on 1-3.
Oh, there she is. I can see you.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm back for now.
Wasn't the dog?
It wasn't. I have to come see IT. My laptop's been acting up.
Yeah.
It just freezes and then I can't do anything except shut it down.
Yeah. That sounds like a job for a professional.
Yep. All right.
Okay, let me look at participants. Are we back? Okay, Ann, Karen.
I am back just eating right now.
No worries. Just want to make sure you're here. Karen, are you back? Vanessa, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Great. Awesome. Great.
Mark Doxer is the host now.
I'm
Oh, yeah,
just doing that in case it happens again.
Got it. I'm plugged in and at least my computer seems stable. Okay, RCTV, we are back in session. Thanks, folks. So we are back in session, everyone. Next on the agenda, make sure I've got it correctly, is the Auburn Street Water Tank Cell Tower update. Bob, can I hand this over to you?
Certainly. This is, I guess, a two-part discussion. I'm going to give the board and the community a quick update, but I think the meat of this discussion is really to follow, and that is really to discuss and decide how to communicate with the public. I can bring some examples from the past, whether it's construction projects, roadway work, or whatever. We've tried different ways. We have some suggestions on what will work. The first thing I want to mention is a communication issue, and I just want to make sure that the board knows, and then we'll advise the neighbors. And this was in your packet. Let me just read to you an email from Peter Isbell, who's our water sewer supervisor, writing to the town engineer. Ryan, I was going to have a crew go up to the Auburn tank site and remove the old rotted foundation from the old standpipe. This is needed in preparation of the new tank build and laydown areas we discussed a few weeks ago. It's also been a real eyesore, and I want to clean up the site as best we can. So I just wanted to let you know before we did any of that, and even before we told the neighborhood that we're going to work up there, just so there's no questions or concerns. In your packet was a somewhat lengthy email from the town engineer on what's been going on. I really don't think I need to read it, but I'll hit a couple high spots. The license agreement with T-Mobile has been complicated. We're still working with their attorney on that. Ivrea is. Effectively, the agreement we had expired, and we were not willing to give them a new lease. First of all, that has to go through town meeting, and secondly, we wanted to make sure a license can be canceled at any time by the town. So, to the extent we're going to ask them to drop their equipment off at some point in the future, and we've agreed to give them a certain amount of notice, a lease would not allow that very easily. So that's been a little more time and effort than we imagined. In terms of moving the public safety and the facilities equipment, that's been a challenge. The site itself, because it needs to be a construction site, can't support a lot of temporary things. The proverbial cows that were discussed, any one of the vendors, ourselves, could go on different options on the site, but we can't all fit there. So that's an option we're still going through. Obviously, the town is, frankly, more concerned with its public safety and emergency equipment communication than we are about the vendors, but we also know there's 25,000 people at least that will be very concerned about telecom access. So that's tricky. We're still working that over. We don't believe at this time that the temporary equipment that we've seen will be a solution to be used on site. We're also trying to limit the amount of trees we have to cut down. It's potential that we could perhaps do a little more temporary work up there if we were willing to cut down a lot of trees, but we really try to avoid that. There has been meetings internally and with the chair of CPDC to discuss the project and to see what path they need to go through for site plan review and a permitting process. They are scheduled right now for about a month from now on CPDC, and that's about as fast as you see CPDC. So the amount of planning has been pretty intense, and hopefully they get through the process. My understanding is it will probably take a second meeting with CPDC, but it's slightly possible that the first meeting will resolve the issues. And again, in advance of that meeting, certainly the neighbors would get a notification from CPDC or from staff that there is a CPDC meeting. I don't think it was listed in Ryan's memo, but we have learned that the cost of the project is higher. I don't have an exact figure, but I'm going to say $300,000 or $400,000 higher. So it was budgeted at 4.5 million. We could undertake the project for 4.5 million, but it would really leave us very vulnerable with low contingency. So we have to discuss how to handle that. The water reserves is huge. It's like $6 million. So, the most likely outcome is we go to town meeting in this April, and we ask them for a transfer towards this project. There seems no sense to me where we're sitting on such good reserves that we try to increase the debt authorization. As it is, we've already engaged bond counsel, and we're looking to issue debt in February for this and several other water and sewer projects. So the chief driver of the cost is the time that's gone by and the cost of steel, not so much the labor. And Mark, I still don't know the exact plan of how to construct this, but I have heard that it is still possible that it'll be built off site and moved here, let's just say. So that'll be exciting if that's the way it happens. There's a lot of prep work on the site that has to happen. The first thing is to take the current water tank offline and make sure the rest of the water system is balanced and operational. It's not a serious risk to do that. We have 2 water tanks, the other one's up on Bear Hill in the southern part of town, sort of near the rotary or near the intersection. Plenty of communities have no water tanks. So it's nice that we have one. The chief purpose for it, I would say, is in the case of a fire or an emergency, we have extra reserves. In case our connection to the MWRA, which has happily now two different physical locations, in case that ever was interrupted, and it was once, we have water that we can use already stored. And it's also a water tank is used for, I'll just say balancing chemicals. I'm not a water treatment plant or water scientist, but I know that they're constantly daily measuring and sometimes twice a day measuring the chemicals all around town, and they have to adjust. Taking the water tank off site will cause a different type of water flow in the system. So there'll be some preparation to that. They've already done all the engineering and the planning. It'll just be up to them turning it off. And then there's a lot of site work in terms of safely removing what's there and preparing the site for construction. You can see the dates that the town engineer has previously mentioned is still the plan. We want to go out to bid, after CPDC is finished with us, certainly. The DEP needs to also review the application. Until we're done CPDC, we really can't get that to them. We hope to get that to them in March. And it's pretty aggressive, but we have been told that they will do their best and understand the priority, that they'll get through it in 1 or 2 months, which is, great as far as DEP goes. In terms of just some initial thoughts on communication, I see this project as at least 2 different phases. It might turn out to be more. The first phase to me is all communication. There's no engineering in terms of communication. There's no construction. I think I'm the best person to be a point person for town staff for that. As needed, I'll have Matt back me up as ombudsman, or certainly DPW. But at some point, as we get close to construction, and not wait for construction, but as we're getting real close, I'll hand it off for DPW, because then they will be dealing with things on the ground that I won't know all the details of. In terms of how other projects have worked along those lines, it's hard to know, because today is so different than 10 years ago in terms of social media and communication. But previously, the town has built websites to, for instance, describe the downtown improvements that were done many years ago, where Main Street was torn up. A lot of businesses were impacted severely, and construction schedules, varied every day. So, for a project like that, and I don't think it's quite as intense for this, but you have to be prepared to give frequent updates. So now we have better tools. Social media, Facebook would provide us that ability to do it more rapidly. And I think that we'll have to work on different options, but I think the engineers will lead that. They've done great communications. If you're ever really bored, look at their web page and look at their old projects. They put tons of information up there. The one change that this one might entail is more use of Facebook during construction. As I learned from being part of the library project, the best laid plans never happen. Things happen all the time. Construction changes, the weather changes, someone doesn't deliver steel the day they're supposed to. So communication is a daily thing. There was 3 of us that worked on the library project from that perspective. We had a project manager full-time. We had Joe Huggins, we had myself. I would say the communication strategy and policy with the neighbors was informal. There wasn't a lot of public meetings. Now, I should back up and say what the library did before the construction was approved and started, I don't fully know. I know they had neighborhood meetings. I don't know a lot about that. And that's kind of the stage we're in now for the water tank. But once construction was underway and approved, our communication to neighbors was generally one-on-one out in the field. There was 1 or 2 neighbors that we were constantly in touch with, always keeping them aware of things. And then there was a larger neighborhood that, for instance, the day that steel beams had to be delivered, we had to shut down a couple of streets. So obviously we had to tell the neighbors with as much notice as we could, because their streets were not accessible for a few hours. So in thinking about this site, it's a pretty tight site. Right now, we believe that all the construction vehicles will sit on the site or on the road in front of the site. But things will happen. So we'll have to, be able to communicate with the neighborhood. And one of the things that Mark and I discussed is having a select board point person, having a town point person, me to start. And then, the neighbors have already organized, and if they can help guide us, to 1 or more point people to communicate with, I think that will help. And I think that the ultimate communication strategy would be a three-way discussion as to what works best for everyone. There's no sense in us doing a lot of work on a communication platform that doesn't satisfy the neighbors. We really want to know what works for them. And no matter how well we plan and how well we communicate during a project. Unexpected things happen. That's just part of the course, and you just deal with them as best you can. I know when discussing this with Amy a while back, not every neighbor of the library was thrilled. That's just the way it goes. Some of them didn't want the library to be expanded. And they decided during construction that was the right time to have that discussion. And obviously it was kind of too late for that. So, as long as you offer good, accurate information to the neighborhood, that's really the best you can do. If someone disagrees with part of what's going on and it's something we have control over, then we're certainly willing to make adjustments. One of the neighbors for the library suggested that the lighting was too bright. It looked good on paper. All it took was one visit at night and you could see that it was way too bright. So some of Joe Huggins' staff actually invented with their own materials a solution for it. And if you ever look at the lights on the library, especially, I forget the roads, if you're standing in front of the library and it's to the left, look at the little cones that are on some of the outside lights. Those were not built that way by the designer. Those were built that way by facilities. So, the real key is to have a good dialogue with the neighborhood and work with them as best you can, and to think creatively as you need to. It's hard for me to compare the library project to this one. This one is so simple by comparison from a construction standpoint. But certainly some of the finer points on communication will be very similar. We had construction meetings weekly. For a while, I went every week. More often than not, I went a little less than that. And we found that the need to communicate with neighbors was not necessarily weekly. We were open to it, but it didn't always happen. On rare occasion, maybe one of the neighbors was allowed onto the site with a construction hat. And if our insurance carrier is listening, I'm sure that never happened. But having the neighbors feel like they're included at least is fine. But they have to also understand they can't have full access to a construction site. It's just not possible. So again, we're open-minded as to what the best communication paths are. We could build it, we could suggest it, but we'd really rather have a collaborative discussion with the neighbors. And if the board wishes to be part of that, we'd certainly welcome that. The discussion so far has been a little bit different for me. The facts that I see in this project are quite different than has been represented in a lot of the discussions. A number of years ago, a cell tower was approved and funded by town meeting, and it went through a former select board. I am actually the one that stopped that project. If it weren't for me saying stop, that would have been built. So why things have been represented as they have, it doesn't matter, but it's just not accurate. And it points to the need to have good communication. I think that, Ryan is pretty available. We all are pretty available, but we can't be in a constant daily dialogue, with the neighborhood on this once a plan is put in action. So I don't want to raise the expectations that somehow the neighbors are part of the construction project. We'll communicate with them as best we can. We'll take advice from them when they can offer it. But it's not like we're going to be giving them a hard hat and inviting them every day to give us suggestions. We're going to hire experts to do that. We don't know how to do that. The experts do. So I'll stop there. And I know Mark wanted to have a lot of discussion with fellow board members about how to approach this as sort of a community project and how to communicate.
So board members' thoughts, Vanessa?
Thanks, Mark. Well, I think just as a point of clarification to your comments, thanks for the update. In my communications with the butters of the neighborhood, no one has asked for access to the site, to a construction site, or to have access to staff on a daily basis for communications. So from a setting expectations perspective for what the staff can expect, I don't think that's at all part of their request. They're not even there yet. I think it's great to have a plan to determine how we're going to communicate regularly, effectively with this neighborhood. And I think, like I said, I'm happy to be the liaison to this neighborhood, given my previous communications with them. I think providing them with the publicly available information they've requested is a great place to start. And then keeping this, it's a major project. It's going to cost the residents, a fair amount that's already been allocated in tax dollars. So I think we owe it to the community to let them know the ongoing phases, to keep this as a regular, maybe not at every meeting, but perhaps as a monthly agenda item on the select board agenda.
Thanks, Vanessa. Others? Karen?
Thank you, Mark. I think Andrew did a great job in that update, and that's some of what I've heard from the residents as well. And I know it's appreciated, so thank you.
Sorry, you mean Ryan on this one?
Sorry, Ryan. Yes, Ryan. What time is it? It's after 9:30. Okay, so we just took another 20 minutes on this. So I don't think the select board is the appropriate body to be helping this project. A number of years ago, I was on the library building committee. Bob mentioned accurately that there wasn't full support in the neighborhood for the library. What I think is remarkable about this is that none of the neighbors are saying, not in my backyard about the water tower. They're just saying, we've been down this road and we are cut off and we have a loss of trust. So that is, in addition to increasing communication as a way of building trust, I think they deserve to have this project managed by a committee who has the time and some of the expertise to do a good job with this. And that is the Permanent Building Committee. And that is one of the reasons that it was created, is that at the time we were building the library, we didn't have engineers and other relevant types who are able and willing to dedicate the time to really make sure that the project was going along and get answers resolved. And they brought a wealth of information to the library project. I do remember that. So this is above the monetary threshold. I did get a call from the chair of the Permanent Building Committee. He absolutely feels that they have the bandwidth to take a role in helping to facilitate the communication and the ongoing whatever this project needs. And he believes that they would be willing, and he's invited the select board liaison to definitely come in and talk to them about it. Mark might have more to say about that. So, given the history, the extended history of this and the size and the complexity of the project, it is incredibly complex. I don't feel like we're doing a good job for the residents. I would like to see this be quote unquote managed with whoever the appropriate staff point persons are, Bob, whoever, in a select board liaison. That sounds like a great idea. I'd like to see it managed by an appropriate construction management committee, i.e. the Permanent Building Committee. I think that would be best for all.
Bob?
I just want to understand, I'm hearing what you're saying because I'm shocked at some of it. In the past, recently, the Permanent Building Committee has absolutely turned the school department down on requests that are not buildings. So an enrollment study, sure, unofficially, if they have expertise, terrific. So I just want to be careful that I will be happy to talk to the PBC and I'll be happy to take whatever advice and help they can offer. But I just want to make sure that the discussion is on point. You mentioned you sort of saw them in a construction management role. That is not what they do at all. They never have, whether they ever would, I don't know. But again, that's a discussion I can have with them. We will have a construction management supervisor hired as part of this. And again, this isn't really construction. The communications, just the same as a construction project, no doubt there. But if you're going to disassemble a water tank, build one off-site, and then move it on-site, the amount of actual construction is not that high. So I'm happy to talk to the PBC. I've met with them frequently. They're a great committee. And I'll just make sure they understand, their expertise is always welcome by all means. But I'm just surprised at some of the way you described it compared to how they've talked to the schools in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob, I can't comment on how they've spoken to other projects. I can only comment that the chair called me, considered this project, and said they are very much open to getting involved. And my apologize, construction supervisor isn't perhaps the best language. My recollection from the library building committee, the town and an owner's project manager was a key liaison. So perhaps in this construction project, it's a construction supervisor. You know, I leave that to you. I don't have all the details. I know we're early. But on the other hand, early is a great time to get these folk involved because they're engineers and they understand large construction projects.
Oh yeah, I've walked through school buildings. They're extremely thorough. I'm happy to talk to Pat. I assume that's who you talked to?
Yes, Pat Johnson.
So to give the board an update, I actually, I've reached out to Pat. He and I have not connected yet. But the reach out was just, can we talk a little bit? What's, you know, what is possible here, kind of as a follow-up to that. So he and I have yet to connect, but I want to see what happens with that. Ann.
Why don't we plan to move forward with a select board member, a representative of town staff to start with Bob, and perhaps later transition to Ryan or whomever would be appropriate, and a representative or representatives, designated representatives of the community to, you know, engage in ongoing communications and, you know, with the board's, you know, support and blessing to reach out to the permanent building committee.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, my perspective, I think that it's wise to kind of break this into two pieces and to start the communication piece now anyway. And I did chat a little bit with Bob just about the idea of, you know, what might work. And then that's kind of what we came back to you folks with today, just as an idea. But to have the community represented, and I think that they may feel comfortable having you know, one person do that. Obviously, we can ask them. Bob on the town side, one board member, and start that as the process, so that at least we have a good flow of information that starts instantly. And then, just as you said, Ann, and kind of where we started on this, is to figure out what's the way to get kind of the not just communication, I'm going to call it outbound and inbound on that, but more on thinking about this as a construction project. What assistance could PBC offer to it, if any? You know, what they may recommend to us. Let's see what that is also. But, you know, it's a big enough dollar amount, no question. It's a big enough impact. Look, it impacts the entire community as well as those neighbors, right? The entire community, in the sense of, if we don't have cell coverage for X months, or we have much reduced cell coverage, that's not okay. One of the things that I really think makes sense is we need to, we may as a board even need to ask the cell companies to come visit us and talk about their mitigation plans and how they're going to take care of this, and assure us, you know, a la that the Boston discussion, whatever, that the residents and businesses here aren't going to lose their cell coverage while the construction's going on, right? That has to happen also. Where that fits, you know, Ryan is the connection on the engineering side, no question. Who connects to kind of the group that's going to have to make promises here, I suspect, is a different group of people. And I don't know if we have any connections to them yet. Before Bessie, Carlo, did you want to chime in? I don't know if you have any comments here, because then we'll go around a second time.
No, I've just been listening. I think, you know, the neighborhood, you know, has been frustrated for a number of years, and now I see everything moving forward in a positive direction. And I think they just want to know what's going on. I mean, it doesn't have to be daily, it doesn't have to be weekly, but, you know, now that we're doing the monthly updates on the board, I think that's sufficient. Any experts we can get to help us, but like Bob said, we're not constructing a building. This is a big project with a big dollar amount, but just communicate with the neighbors. The Delaney's have been great. I've spoken to other neighbors as well, and they just want to know what's going on. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. When I'm going to break ground, when we're going to do this, timelines, and that's all seems to be coming together. So I'm listening here to everybody, and I think Ann's suggestion makes the most sense, and yours, Mark. So I think we just, you know, move forward and we'll adjust, but I think a lot's going to happen this year, so I'm hopeful.
Thanks, Carl. Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. So I want to be careful that we don't go too deep into the weeds as far as all the nitty-gritty details of this proposed change. So how the cell providers are accommodated and how that works. I mean, we've talked about it before. We are not the first town that has had to replace a water tower with cell provider equipment. You know, handing this portion with transferring some of this discussion over to the Permanent Building Committee, who seems amenable to supporting this effort and helping facilitate communications with the residents, seems like the right approach. I mean, we quite frankly cannot take an hour out of every meeting to get a super detailed description of what's happening. You know, the 5 of us are not qualified to be making some of these decisions. It is why we have staff. It is why we hire consultants. So I love Anne's idea of sort of assigning one person from the board, seeing if the neighborhood would like to assign one person to be their point of contact, and working with the Permanent Building Committee. Because again, this has taken up an inordinate amount of time at our meetings, and we really need to start moving this forward, like Carlos said.
Okay, so let's take some action here. So number one, it sounds like let's do an outreach to the Permanent Building Committee in any event. Bob, from your side, and I left a message with Pat, so we can connect and talk about that.
I just did.
I'm sorry, you just did?
I just did, yep.
Yeah, okay, great. So that's check on that one, great. The idea of kind of the communications plan, we need to appoint a point person, I think, from our group, and ask the residents. I think generally they had suggested they might be amenable to this, but make sure that they would be willing to appoint a person as well. I suspect that they will, but we'll ask, obviously. And then that's kind of our starting group in terms of how to follow progress. Does that work for everybody? Cool. So I know Vanessa has offered and I also want to be just careful not to kind of lay all the projects onto one person, but also would like a person that's willing to kind of dig in to do it. Are there other folks that are interested or by, so Carlo, you have interest as well?
Sure, I think a couple hours ago, Vanessa volunteered for something else too, but I can't remember what it was now. But yeah, it's parking. Parking, yeah. So, it doesn't matter to me. If Vanessa wants to take it on, but I'm willing to take it on as well. So it's not. I know I've gotten to know a few of the neighbors, like the rest of us have in that neighborhood. But if Vanessa wants it, that's fine. If she doesn't want to do both, I can take on the tower.
I've been sort of following both of these for some time and have been actively working with the residents of both. So I'm happy and have the time to accommodate both.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think the more
I'm
immediate
sure
one,
another topic will come up soon.
I think the more immediate one is the water tank, and I would suggest that as a board we just let's take care of that one now. We can talk about the parking one as we move to the next discussions. So does that work for everybody? That Vanessa, we would ask Vanessa to kind of take on the point person role?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa. Thanks all. Great. Okay, let's move on. Discuss beer and wine only package store licenses. Okay, so from where we when we last met, we started our discussion, and there was a request made to get some feedback, both from the coalition and also from the Board of Health. I think both of those are in the packet that we got here. And then it kind of comes back on us, and then we have, sorry, I'm just getting to my packet here for a minute also. So Bob, just a question on page, right, so it's like page 29 in the packet where it says public comments requested. Is this a proposed next step if the board had an appetite to pursue this? I'm not sure what I'm looking at here.
I'm not sure what page again, Mark. I'll look at your packet.
29. So it's right after that Peter Insult note.
Okay.
Or Isbell, sorry. Sorry, Peter.
Also, Chief Clark has joined us for this topic, just so you know.
This, Mark, it might not be the most recent packet. The
Oh,
most
I'm sorry,
recent
you're
packet
right.
Has 215 pages.
Oh, sorry, I'm only at 152. I think you're correct. So I've got the wrong page number.
Are we
Oh,
looking at the-
I think I know what you mean. It's the note from Town Council from Ivrea.
Right.
40 in the new
Malt
packet.
beverage only. It's 40?
40 in the
Thank
new packet.
Can't I see it?
Sorry, I probably should go to the new one, shouldn't I?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
I'll
Yeah, I
put
think-
the link in the chat for the.
And I can also share that if you want, if that would help, that document.
Please.
Want me to do that, Mark?
Yeah, I think, I guess I need to understand a little bit more what it is
Okay.
first. What it looks like to me is kind of how things might proceed.
Yeah,
And
let me-
the pages that follow it are the feedback that we requested. So both from Board of Health.
Let me
and from
take
the
a step
coalition.
back. Yeah, maybe we should have put them in reverse order, but what Ivrea is writing to you in this document is you are required to have a public hearing if you are to change your liquor license policy. Some of your policies, in fact, most of your policies don't require a public hearing. So that's what she's addressing in that section. She was not clear, and I was not clear where the board is in terms of having this discussion. You know, whether you're at this point or at that point. So I just said, write something that's generic that can apply to whatever process the board chooses. And she just wants to make sure you understand, you know, that a public input is essential, or an opportunity for public input is essential for making any changes.
Got it. Okay, so let's pull back on the reins. I think things are upside down. We can come back to this as kind of the last piece of the discussion. So we left off at, hey, let's get some more input. Let's ask the coalition. Let's ask the Board of Health to get some feedback. So that's contained in the packet. Then I think the discussion for us at this point would be to say, hey, either there's some appetite on the board to pursue this further, in which case then we would go and take a look at Ivrea's memo here on how to proceed. Or to say, hey, we're not ready to have that discussion. I think that's what's in front of us, is to kind of decide how we want to move forward, if at all, on this topic. Vanessa.
I have no desire to move forward to make the request to have separate licenses as has been discussed, which is beer and wine, which would be open to particular businesses.
Karen?
I concur. I have no desire to move forward on this topic. Thank you.
So I expressed my opinion, I think, at the last meeting, and I stay with that. I don't think this is appropriate for us to be addressing now.
Well, it sounds like it's probably a moot point because there are some majority who do not want to move forward. I do feel like the packet contains only half of the information I was hoping to have to make a decision about whether to move forward. It doesn't contain any information from the chamber or the business community or from our economic development director, who had previously alluded to the fact that there were businesses who might be interested in coming to Reading to take advantage of sort of creative business models that liquor license changes could make possible. But sounds like it's a moot point. So.
It might be a moot point, but that doesn't stop me. I do know some of that information.
Okay.
Obviously, I can't speak for the business community or the chamber, but I did speak to the prospective, oh, there's Aaron, tenant who might come to town. And, you know, because you've done it with a home rule charter, it's hard to have this discussion. It's complicated. But I guess I'll say that the request that person may have could be separate and distinct from anything generic. So for instance, Pamplemousse is classified as a liquor store, technically. And the board has seen some communication where you could make a subcategory of a liquor store because, Pamplemousse is certainly not the same kind of package store that a real package store is. By percent of sales, by percent of square feet, whatever you want to look at it. A prospective tenant coming into town, looking at the town, is much more along the line of Pamplemousse. Not exactly, but it would fit into that type of a classification. It is not a restaurant and it is not a liquor store. It is not a convenience store the way you and I think of them. It's more of a specialty store. So that was the specific inquiry that Erin had mentioned previously, and Erin's joined us if you want to ask for more.
So under our existing liquor laws, could we not accommodate this new proposed business? Or if we wanted to, could we take some additional action later that's not the time sensitive path that we would have pursued had we opened up the conversation further?
Unfortunately, the answer is no, we can't accommodate them now. And based on the time frame they shared with Erin and I, which is, I'll say, kind of like an April, June decision point, certainly not to have a license, but decision point. If we are going to, try to work with them, you're going to need a town meeting approval. It's going to probably require a special act, just like Pamplemousse did. And you're going to need to work through the town meeting. And again, Ivrea said 99% sure to go to the voters. And until she sees the exact proposal, she can't make it 100. So it still would be time sensitive, but it would be more narrow if the board would choose to go down that route. So it's different than just opening the generic door, if you will, with all due respect.
So make sure I'm understanding. So this would be, that essentially is a different path completely. And there would be time sensitivity to it in terms of getting it done. But it's, there is, I think, see if I'm reading it right. There could be a way to do that. It would require a special path, and including town meeting and voter approval as well. As opposed to, gee, the only way we could ever accommodate something like that is if we open up a new kind of license right now.
Well, I'm not sure. There's so many different things you could accomplish or offer, and they all pretty much take the same path. Whatever you're going to do needs to go through the legislature, needs to go through town meeting, and probably to the voters. It's a question of what are you going to ask each of those constituents. So my understanding is that you could ask a narrow request of any type. We want to have one license that meets this criteria. So it could be a specialty store, as Erin and I have discussed. It could be a convenience store. It could be a gas station. It could be any business. Now, I can't tell you that the same probability of a home rule petition going through is equal on all those requests. Frankly, to me, it seems much more likely that a specialty store, one type of specialty store that doesn't exist in town would have a much higher probability than you allowing one of many businesses to have a liquor license in town. One gas station out of the however many we have. So the path is very similar, but the type of the request, could be seen differently, I guess. And again, if the board is trying to act in a timely way, which is not necessary, but if it is, you have those hurdles, especially the voters.
Yeah.
From a sort of chicken and egg perspective, is this business waiting on us to do something before its decision point about coming into town, or would they come to town and then seek?
They are not waiting for Reading. They are actually waiting for another community. They've been in a 2-year discussion with another community. And once they get a little bit of information, they'll make a decision on that community and then perhaps, entertain Reading's opportunities. And they will know that within the next, I don't know, Erin, month or two, 2 months?
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. There is another a second business with the same kind of format that is also looking at a different opportunity as well, that where this would come into play.
Okay.
I would say that knowing a path that the select board is looking at sooner rather than later will certainly help. Help these businesses make a decision on whether or not to continue to pursue their path in Reading, and maybe continue to pursue the business model that they're thinking of. So, having some certainty around this, or at least a path forward or some time frame, would be incredibly helpful as we recruit businesses to town.
Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. So I stand by my earlier comment of not wanting to pursue this. I don't think that we as a body should be making decisions on hypothetical businesses that may or may not come to town at some point. That seems risky to me. And do we necessarily want more liquor stores? I mean, we're a town that's, 2 miles wide by 7 miles high. Like how many liquor stores do we need? I do not see a business purpose or a community benefit to this. Should more restaurants want to come to town? Maybe not right now. We have plenty of those licenses that remain. I would love to see more restaurants coming to town. I have no desire to expand in this area. I have spoken to the existing business owner who pursued this and have explored some options with him directly, but I feel strongly that we should not pursue this. I see no benefit to the town and haven't heard anything that would tell me otherwise.
Carla, you haven't had a chance to weigh in yet.
Oh, thanks. I'm all about creating opportunity. I agree with Vanessa that we don't want our gas stations and liquor stores and who do we pick gets one, if we make one available or open it up, but we're in economically challenged times, and yes, I wasn't around for the Pamplemousse vote and decision, whatever board that was, but I'd rather have options, and I'm sure Erin would rather have options to present to prospective tenants. So do we want more liquor stores? The answer is probably no. I read the letter from Chief Clark and the coalition and the Board of Health and totally agree. But do we want to create some opportunities for other businesses? Would I love to see a brew pub over by Market Basket with some axe throwing and some cornhole and some other games? Yeah. What does that entail? What does that involve? Would I like to see, the post office space, restaurant space, dedicated space open this year? Yeah. Is it gonna? Probably not, but that's a restaurant. So we want a lot of things to happen. We're gonna have a lot of empty space, and we do have a lot of empty space. So on one hand, I think we should move forward on designating, like Bob said, maybe a specific license. And like I said at our last meeting, Pamplemousse is specialty. It's not a liquor store. I don't think anyone looks at it as a liquor store. It's a specialty store that sells alcohol. There are many of them out there. I, as a business owner, sell to many of them, and they're specialty stores. They're not liquor stores. So if we can create opportunity, that's what I'm about. If that means granting a special license and a special designation, and we can start that process, I'm all for it. If I get outvoted, that's the will of the board. But I think Ann is thinking similarly, but I don't want to speak for Ann, but I'd rather create some opportunity if we can.
So I'm not completely sure I'm following. So if we were to say that we are willing to listen to folks who come in with a new and interesting specialty proposition, and we would expedite the path as best we could if and when that comes in, if it makes sense to us. I think that's something that conceivably we could say. I would not be comfortable kind of creating new designations now for things that we don't know about and aren't really sure would or wouldn't come. I'm not sure that serves any purpose. I also think that what I think I'm still hearing though is that the notion of kind of opening the door for convenience stores just to create new specialty kinds of liquor stores or liquor stores that would only have certain activities. I think the note we got from Chief, from the coalition, from the Board of Health, I think from what at least some of us have talked about already, I don't think that that is in the public interest. I don't see that. So the path forward, where we got to here in the first place was, hey, there may be a request for a convenience store to have a beer and wine only liquor license. My opinion on that is I don't think that's the right path for us to go down. I don't think we want to open that door. I don't want to be deciding which stores do and which stores don't, and I most certainly don't want them all to have it. So I wouldn't want to move forward with that at all. Now we're starting to get hypothetical and ask other questions based on questions about, hey, what might we be interested in doing? I think if something gets real, then we should have discussions about it, and that sounds great. But until it's real, I don't see a real benefit here. I think we're going to create something that turns out to be not quite right and have to modify it anyway. My vote would be to wait on that.
I think, Mark, the process just takes too long. That's the problem. A business owner.
Yeah, no, it takes a while, but we're talking about getting town meeting and a vote of the population here to support something. And
Right.
I'm not sure we can go in and say, hey, we want you to vote for this kind of thing that might take place in the future.
Well, isn't it for us to grant? As long as it's available. I don't know the answers to all these questions, but if it's available, then we have the authority to grant it or not. But if we don't have it, we can't grant anything.
I think we'd have to describe what it was specifically, and that's where I'm not sure we can define it. So Erin had a comment that I kind of jumped on. Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. There are limitations to what I can say, but I would like to say that there are two real businesses that are looking at currently vacant spaces in downtown that as part of their business model, or I should say their business model is both a restaurant and retail space that also has a specialty liquor or specialty beer and wine component. I would say, for example, Italy, if you can envision what that looks like. So we do have two real businesses that are actively pursuing Reading with that kind of business model, if that's helpful to contextualize.
Is there a way to define better what they'd be looking for? In other words, what kind of license would it need to be?
Bob.
Yeah, I think that we're at the point in the conversation where Ivrea needs to be here. I think that if Erin's willing to speak freely with Ivrea, then it can be a much more informed decision. I think I know the answers. I think what Carlo just said is accurate, but I don't know that for absolutely sure. You do not need to have a business, though, to create a license category. But since Reading does them with a home rule petition, then I stop and think, uh-oh, Ivrea. So I just don't know.
So I guess if we break this into two pieces, if we could, and then sorry, I'm not calling you Vanessa. Piece one is the question as it relates to convenience stores. We probably should make sure we're pursuing that or not. And then the second would be if there's a different class of license, and it sounds like it may be that we need a discussion or in Ivrea, at least to better understand what it might look like so we know what we'd be proposing. Vanessa.
Thanks, Mark. That was going to be my suggestion about 10 minutes ago. We're discussing a hypothetical that simply doesn't exist. There's no official request before us. When we're at that point, I think we should absolutely consider it. And then determine what the request is and what it entails and what our role is and what town meeting and home rule petition and all that good stuff. So I think if we as the board say that we do not agree with moving this particular item before us, which is the specific beer and wine license, then we can end that conversation, agree not to move forward with it. And then should Erin want to bring something else in front of us because we have a particular request, then absolutely, let's hear it at that time. Just because we shut down, just because we don't want to pursue one avenue doesn't mean we won't pursue another.
Other comments? No. Okay. So, oh, sorry, Ann. Sorry, my screen blanked.
I would be interested in having Erin speak with Ivrea about what are these businesses, what kinds of license category would these businesses be looking for? I think that would be helpful information, but I don't know if even if we got that information, if what I'm hearing from 3 board members is that's not of interest unless there's like a particular business proposal before us.
All right, so I think where we are is that we're, as it relates to convenience stores, we are not interested in pursuing that discussion further. And I guess an action item to Erin is if there is something in particular to chat with Ivrea, and then that may come back before us soon, and then we can evaluate based on the information we have at the time. I would feel comfortable also stating, as it relates to kind of future economic business development, that when there are interesting ideas, we'd love to hear them and see what we can do, and decide if that's in the best interest of the community and take it forward. But just doing that kind of generically, that I'm not comfortable with. Any last comments? All right, let's roll on. Next, sorry. Vote on board resolution regarding state biomass rules. Karen, can I hand this to you to lead that discussion?
Sure. Thank you very much. Okay. So Vanessa and I recently learned about proposed state changes to the Renewable Portfolio Standards, otherwise known as RPS. These were state rules that were approved in 2012, and they define what can and can't be called renewable power supplies. It is, and the biomass comes in because it is currently difficult for biomass plants in the state to qualify for renewable energy subsidies because wood burning for electricity isn't a very efficient process. And I will give you a little bit more about that in a second. So these rule changes were proposed December 14th. So not too long ago. And immediately we started seeing some letters go out about concern from Senators Markey and Warren, and then one came out from the State Attorney General, also the Springfield City Council, and then today we had a statement from Senator Jason Lewis coming out against these proposed changes. So the proposed changes involve lowering the standards for wood burning biomass, like the Palmer plant referenced in some of the articles that you have. If the RPS standards are lowered, then an inefficient plant can suddenly be called a renewable energy source. And the key thing is, at that point, a plant that produces renewable energy according to the standards in Massachusetts then becomes eligible for very lucrative energy certificates, which should be considered subsidies. So for this particular plant, there's only one in Massachusetts. There are none today. There is one that has been under discussion for 10 years. You probably saw that in some of the articles. So I'm just going to refer to that Palmer plant. That plant has not been economically viable to build because it has not been considered renewable energy because it couldn't meet clean air, clean energy standards. So naturally, the folks that are trying to build it would like those standards relaxed. So if the standards were relaxed, that would mean about $12 to $14 million of subsidies in form of energy credits for this plant. It would, according to a number of sources, it would pretty much make the business case for this plant. The only way they will make this a viable business venture, because that's what it is if we relax the energy standards in Massachusetts. So we wanted to bring this to your attention because not only do we feel this board and even the previous board has been a very strong supporter of renewable energy in Massachusetts and concerned about the climate, but this plant would also be built in an economically disadvantaged neighborhood of Springfield, which is often referred to as an asthma capital. And at this point, with the number of articles increasing, Reading has also specifically been mentioned in conjunction with this dirty plant. This is timely because my understanding from Senator Lewis's office is that this should go to the Telecommunications Committee, and that's where the letter is addressed to. We can request that they have a hearing. They will consider these regulations before deciding whether they should send them on to the governor. And this is kind of an unusual step. So this is a great opportunity for us at this point to take a stand and say to our state legislators, please, renewable energy is very important to the citizens of Reading. We want to be able to use renewable energy. We can't do that if we relax the RPS standards and allow dirty plants to be built. We're a community that believes in sustainability, so we want the state to make decisions in keeping with our values, and therefore we're asking you to vote with us and decide that we should send this letter and ask the state to make smart energy decisions, and specifically to ask for a hearing on this topic. And Vanessa has some more that she'd like to weigh in with.
Thanks, Karen. So Karen actually had brought this to my attention. Admittedly, it's a very complex and in-depth topic to be taking up at 10:20 at night. So thanks, Karen, for the background on why this is important. I will just say a couple things as far as why the select board should weigh in. The way I view this, it's a state issue. The board has a right to, and frankly, a responsibility to talk to our state legislators and advocate for decisions that are happening at the state level that are going to affect us here locally. So this is a way for us to communicate this is a priority to us, that we care about where our community derives energy, and how it could potentially negatively impact another community, and especially one that is low income and heavily compromised to people of color. So Karen can probably answer more questions than I can, but I just wanted to sort of throw that out there. I do think it's our responsibility. I've reached out to other communities and have shared the language in the letter for them to also lobby their state delegates. So it's not Reading specific, it's much broader at this point. And I'd love to see, the select board be sort of on the right side of history as far as how we, where we set the standards for, where the state sets its standards for what, qualifies as clean energy.
Yeah.
So just a procedural question here. I actually have never seen before regulations come before a state legislative committee, and I did see some of in the packet, some language from the Attorney General's office suggesting this was unique. Do you have any more information about that? Why is it that this comes before a legislative committee as opposed to going through a traditional agency rulemaking process?
I actually don't have that answer, but that is specifically what I was told by the chief of staff from Senator Lewis's office, and he said this is unique. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that it was when it was put in place in 2012, they stipulated in there that changes would need to take a different path. That's a very great question. It was new.
So I had very good. I have no objection to this, so folks know I can discuss this. I can vote on it, but I cannot sign a letter if it's going to the legislature or if it's CCing our legislators.
But you can vote on it?
I can vote on it. I can vote on it. Mm-hmm.
Carlo, any comments? Yep, sorry.
Well, thanks. Not really a comment, I guess, a question for anyone, maybe Karen and Vanessa. Is RMLD issuing their own statement or resolution, whatever you want to call it?
Vanessa, do you want to take that one or?
Sure, I'll take it. So this is actually separate and distinct from RMLD. This is a state matter that RMLD can weigh in on as well as we can. But we as a select board have authority to advocate our concerns to the state as we see fit. So this isn't an RMLD related issue. This is really a state regulatory issue. Now, that said, RMLD has been sort of at the forefront from a municipal light department perspective on clean energy. So, take that for what it's worth.
I can add a drop more color to this just for a second also. Apparently the commissioner of DOER is going to be participating in the next RMLD meeting. This gentleman, Mr. Woodcock, is in fact copied on this proposed letter. I also have received outreach from our CAB representative wanting to explore things a lot further also. But I am in the copy loop, but I have stayed clear because we already have liaisons to RMLD.
Mark?
Yeah.
You bring up a good point. Vivek did speak to both of the RMLD liaisons to this board, and he is in support of this letter.
Thanks. Sorry, Ann.
No, I think my question was answered.
So clearly RMLD will be talking somehow about this, but I think to Vanessa's point, this focus has been on the legislative side of things and the issue of clean energy. And we've been talking a lot about clean energy, our support for it. And as I read the letter, I went through it, tried to go through it carefully. The last paragraph, I think, is the core for me. Full preamble. As such, we request you hold a hearing or take other appropriate actions on the proposed amendments. That's what we're asking for, which I guess I feel comfortable doing.
So can we have
a motion?
Would it be helpful if I read a motion?
Yes, it would.
So I'm gonna wing this. Sorry, Caitlin. Move that the board approve the letter to our state delegation regarding the proposed changes to biomass rules in the RPS.
Okay. Sorry, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Can I propose a friendly amendment? The letter isn't just to our legislators. It actually is to the telecommunication committee legislators. So we may want to just friendly amendment to modify your words a little bit to incorporate that.
Friendly amendment accepted.
Mark,
maybe
is there
we-
any value in me sharing that letter on the screen?
Do folks all have it? Have you seen it? It's a couple of pages.
It was in the packet, both
Yep.
probably.
So it's actually addressed to the Honorable Thomas Golden Jr., House Chair of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities and Energy, and the Honorable Michael J. Barrett, who's the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities and Energy. And
So I don't know what Senator Lewis said about this, but there are actually no committees right now. They have yet to be appointed. So they were the last chairs.
so can I just ask, and procedurally, what would you suggest, given that that's the case? Should we send it to them and our current legislators and request that they get it to the appropriate people as the committees are formed?
Let's see, I'm just taking a peek at this bill history.
Mark?
Yeah, it was placed on file. It was active last session. It was placed on file on the 5th. I guess it.
Mark, can I add something?
Sure can, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I got feedback from Senator Lewis's office that he said, you're correct, the committees are officially not formed. What he said was that people are still acting in their capacities, so like business as usual. And that's why it was written this way.
Okay. Did you get feedback on the draft at all? I'm just wondering if they have if there's any ability for them to hold a hearing. I mean, they couldn't. I don't think they could hold a hearing on I don't think they could do what we've asked.
My understanding is that committee is going to hold the hearing. That's what we were told.
Once they're formed. But the bill was filed in the last legislative session. So I don't know if it will be refiled by DOER.
Oh, I think I just heard that. Yes. We're
They're
getting
going to refile it.
I think
they'll refile the communication.
You're jogging my memory. Yes. Okay. So, because there was actually some danger. I was speaking about the ins and outs. There's a possibility the governor could go ahead and approve these RPS regulations, but maybe he would be unlikely to do that because there might be some ensuing lawsuits, in protest. So, and then I think that discussion did lead into it's going to be refiled and pushed out a little bit. So the 30 days would have been running out earlier this week. So that's why, so they had 30 days to think about these changes and hold a hearing, and the timing was not good for that. That was never going to happen.
So I understand Anne's concern regarding the change in leadership. Is it fair to assume that this would transfer to whoever the new chair is? I mean, we do it. I have to imagine, right? Unless I'm missing something. Anne on this one.
It was filed as a communication in the last session. So it sounds like Karen thinks it's going to be refiled. It would have a new number attached to it if that's the case. This is not something that I've seen before in terms of a draft regulation coming before a legislative committee. So I'm not familiar with this process.
Would the board feel comfortable if Karen and I were to take this away and perhaps gently amend it to incorporate some language to indicate with the understanding that this may be refiled as a new number for the 2021 year or something to that effect? Because I know we still have to get through minutes. So that would be the only thing that we would change.
And one question, the current draft says like from the Reading Select Board. Since I can't sign it, I feel like it probably shouldn't come from the Reading Select Board listed out, like maybe those who want to sign it could sign on as individuals.
The Reading Select Board is representative of the majority of the board.
Okay. Is that
So if you either abstain or don't vote or don't sign, it can still be representative of the board if the majority agrees to sign on.
Bob, did you have feedback on that?
Just in order to sort of take care of Ann's ethics concerns, can say the undersigned members of the select board or Reading Select Board, to be clear.
if you'd like it to just say the Reading Select Board, I think I should just abstain. Maybe. I think that might be cleaner. Or if you want it to be either, I think it makes sense for either, individual signatures, or if it's going to say the Reading Select Board, I will abstain.
Only to ease the editing process. It might be easier to leave as is if you're comfortable abstaining. I'm trying to limit the number of edits we make after a vote. That's my only.
Understood. I can abstain.
Okay, so we have a motion, the friendly amendment, just changing it to include the people named on top. We have a second. Any last discussion? Not appearing. Let's take a vote. As I see you on the screen, Carlo.
Yes.
Vanessa.
Yes.
Anne.
I'm abstaining.
Karen.
Yes.
And Mark, yes. Thank you, folks. Okay, Basque is next. Does the board have any questions on what Basque presented that's in the packet that requires discussion before a motion is brought? Or let me ask a quick question. Is it possible, I noticed that there's a person that would serve on two boards at the same time, the historic district and the historic. Is that okay? That is okay. Okay, that was my only question. Any other questions from board members? Okay, let me put the motions up on the screen. Sorry, I just opened the wrong thing. My apologies. Okay, Carlo, can I ask you, do they pop up?
Yep.
Great.
All right, one by one, right?
We do, because some of them have different.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, move to appoint Pino. We ready? Sorry.
Hang on one second. Can I ask board members, sorry, the last motion has a typo. Can I just fix it? It has the wrong date. Sorry, it had things ending 2021.
Oh, Mark,
it is 2021. That's okay. Sorry, you're right.
those are true. Yep.
Sorry, I'm in the wrong year. I'm not quite sure how that happened.
Mr. Chair, can we dispense with reading every single appointment?
Some of them are different. I think they're different motions, and some of them have different dates. I think we need to go through them. Sorry about that. But
unfortunately, that is correct.
Carlo, please go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Move to appoint Pino D'Orazio to a full position on the Historic District Commission with a term expiring June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Would the board be okay if we just go through all of them, second each one of them, and then take a vote at the end? Okay, thanks. Go ahead, please keep going, Carlo.
Move to appoint Amelia Friedman to a full position on the Historic District Commission with a term expiring June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Karen. Next.
Move to appoint Virginia Adams to an associate position on the Historic District Commission with a term expiring June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
And get that one. Next, please.
Move to appoint Priscilla Pola to an associate position on the Historic District Commission with a term expiring June 30th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Here. Next one, please.
Move to appoint Pino D'Orazio to a full position on the Historical Commission with a term expiring June 30th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Ann. Next, please.
Move to appoint Daniel DiVirgilio to a full position on the Human Relations Advisory Committee with a term expiring June 30th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Karen.
Move to appoint Caitlin King to an associate position on the Recreation Committee with a term expiring June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. These are painful. If you wouldn't mind, Ann, if you're okay with all of them, can you just second the rest of them? So we don't have to go
Yes.
through each. Go ahead, next,
Yes.
please.
Move to appoint Michael Smith to associate position on the Cultural Council with a term expiring June 30th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ann.
Second.
Move to appoint Nancy Zemlick to an associate position. Sorry, this is in my way. On the Council of Aging with a term expiring June 30th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion on these folks? Okay, I would take them.
Was there any questions as far as anyone chosen above someone else, or are these all one-for-one replacements or changes, or?
One for one, Vanessa. One
There
for
were no
one.
extras.
There were no,
Great, that's
there were no competing applicants this round.
Excellent, thank you.
That's another, only the top candidates were listed. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll go through a roll call. So this is to approve all of these together. Carlo,
Oh, yes.
Vanessa,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Mark, yes. Thank you. Okay, minutes. Let's see.
Are there any amendments?
I did not receive any in advance.
Any sense?
I don't have any.
I don't have any.
Hang on, give me just 1 second. I believe I went through them. I just want to see if I scribbled anything in the margin. Sorry, I'm scrolling. I think I am fine as well. Okay, Carla, can I ask you to make a motion? I don't have it handy on my screen, sorry.
No. What are the two dates? Sorry.
12/15 and 12/16.
All right. Can I do them both at once?
I think so.
Yes.
Since we have no amendments? All right. Motion to approve the meeting minutes of December 15th and December 16th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion? Not appearing. I will call the roll. Carlo,
Yes.
Vanessa,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Mark, yes. Future agendas. I need to check with the board on potential dates for an executive session that would need to take place before the end of the month. Bob, did you suggest that sorry, let me get my calendar. I wanted to get possible dates. The next Tuesday, I think, is not possible. Is that correct, Bob?
Let me just go to my calendar.
I think the 28th was one of the questions.
I would say that my presence is not critical. I think if Jean could attend, that might be fine. I am tied up with screening committee work on the nights of the 26th and 27th. But I am available on the 25th if that helps. But honestly, for this, I think Jean can sit in. Jean can keep me apprised. But I have to find out if she's available.
Right. So board members, can you just take a look at that week of the 25th? Are there nights that are a problem? And then we won't pick one at the exact moment. We'll have Bob check with Jean if it's a date that conflicts for him.
Yeah, and you will need to post it soon this week, just so you know.
Yeah, yes.
Do you want us to tell you our availability now, or should we just email Bob?
I think that's fine. I would just ask that you do it right away so that, because we may need to post tomorrow.
Is there a FinCom meeting on Monday? I have a save the date in my calendar. I don't know how old that is.
That could be a school committee meeting, and FinCom may be posted for that. The school's going over their budgets.
Oh.
So I think the night of the 25th, at least once upon a time, was the school committee voting on the budget, if they're still on that schedule.
I've been attending, so I'd rather it not be that day. I cannot do the 27th. I'm available Tuesday and Thursday.
It looks like Jean.
Okay, brothers.
It looks like the 26th she's free, but I'd rather you don't pick Thursday just because the Board of Health meets and I can't be sure.
I can do it on the 26th.
I'm
You
good.
do like 7:30 on the 26th.
Does that work for all? Yeah, Carla, you said good too?
That's fine, yep.
Okay. So let's put that in. We just need to make sure that there's a little bit of work that needs to get done. Let's make sure that can be done by that time. And I'm sorry, Jean said she can do the 26th?
Well, her calendar says that. I'll ask her.
Okay, all right. Okay.
You can plan.
All right, so let's use that as our okay, and then we'll plan to post for that. Anything else that you guys
So
want to
a
push?
future topic, Bob, I'm going to refer back to, you mentioned this earlier in the evening. So the grassroots organization in town who has been, developing out or getting more people to sign up for Black Earth composting, they've been doing a really great job. They've built up some good momentum. I would love us to give them, it'd be great if we learned more about what the opportunities are and gave them a little help in getting to, they'd love to get to a 300 person threshold. And I would love, I know Jane was going to take a look at that. And Bob, you referenced it earlier. Do you think we could put that as an agenda item?
We can. I guess if it's a question of additional PR, so to speak, we could do that without an agenda item. Specifically, what Jane learned that I didn't go into details is if the town subsidizes what the residents pay, whatever it is, I forget, she told me, then it actually ends up costing much more because if the town's taxpayer money is involved, that company must pay prevailing wage. So the best way around that is that we could purchase and supply free of charge some of the bags, some of the bins that the residents need to buy just kind of on a one-time basis. So it's not the same as subsidizing the whole thing, but at least it's an effort in that direction. And other towns have run into real problems trying to subsidize and then finding out that prevailing wage problem.
I am a subscriber. The bin and the bags are part of the starter kit, which are included when you join.
Okay. How about when you need more?
You have to purchase them yourself.
Okay, so, we can certainly ask Jane to come in. She's coming in for the tree policy. We can certainly tack on a short discussion about that. I'll need to find out more from her as to, I don't want to invite a lot of people to come if there's really not a lot to say, but we'll plan for that. I think that's your next meeting, one of your next two.
I believe it is.
Yeah.
It's February 2nd.
So Karen, are you suggesting also that those folks would like to share a presentation with the board
and they could send it, they could send information in the packet and keep it quite short. I know we're just trying to do that and be concise, give us an update and share some ideas. And yeah, as I said, I know Jane was thinking about this, and I'd love to hear what her thoughts are as well.
Got it.
Because there's there's a monetary benefit, and they could even one of a couple of slides would be like, here's where we could go with the tonnage. Here's how much we could potentially save. Although this is not the only reason to do this, but you know, it's a potential savings.
Great. Any other, Carl?
No, thanks, Mark. Karen, you're referring to the email that we got with all that good information on it, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that will be in the next packet, but I agree. We're struggling with our composting needs. We're actually sharing it with another family. So it's not at our house, so it makes it inconvenient. But you know, my daughter's very proactive, and it seems like we're just over 50% to reach that 300. And I think with some good communication, like Karen said, and some hard numbers would benefit. So I'm all for it.
Awesome.
Okay, so we could, I mean, I think we could keep it short. But if you think you could fit it in the agenda sooner rather than later, Mark, the time's right. People are at home. We're eating at home. We're generating a lot of potentially compostable things.
Pizza boxes.
We just joined in with a neighbor as well, actually, Carlo, and it is interesting. I feel like as the weeks have gone on, the amount of compost has gone up, I think, because we've, you know, recognized more and more what can be composted. Mark, and I think I mentioned this to you, but just to see that it gets on a future agenda, I think we've been asked by town meeting to look at the Airbnb regulations.
Yes.
And sorry, it's short. It's Airbnb isn't the generic, but you know what I'm talking about.
So this strikes me as something that we're going to ask town council to present some information on, right?
We already discussed it once, right?
So there was a discussion about it. I think I'm remembering Phil Pacino. I'm remembering a discussion about what we could or couldn't regulate. I don't remember a resolution. Bob, do you?
No, not a resolution, but we did have a discussion that we didn't finish, correct?
Right. I think that's right.
Not
That was a town
since
meeting, though, right? That was a part of the instructional motion. That was the discussion.
we haven't had a conversation as a board since
Okay.
town meeting asked us to tackle this.
Yeah, I would just ask that I also look into whether CPDC should be part of that discussion.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So let's we'll take it back, see who should be involved in the discussion, and then we'll put it onto the nearest future agenda that makes sense. All right. Good catch. Anything else? Great. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn, please.
A second. Thank you, Ann. I'll take a roll call. Carlo.
Yes.
Ann.
Yes.
Vanessa.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes,
Mark. Yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
thank you.